you're anti-trans.
This'll do. All right, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm
You
doing
did
good.
it.
I'm doing good.
I'm
Business
so
as
glad
usual,
that
really.
we got to do the thing. You're the first person I'm collabing with. I love
Oh,
it. It's
cool. That's
great.
amazing.
Yeah, right? I'm like super I'm like a little nervous about it. I'm not like I don't think I'm made for like a live streaming type of thing. I lack a filter and not saying stupid shit on a regular basis. So
I'm the
I'm gonna
same.
do my best. I'm gonna do my best.
I mean, I'm exactly the same. I come out with whatever I come out with, and I think people find that endearing sometimes. So
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like, nothing I say ever comes from like a bad place. It just comes from a place of maybe I'm not the most intelligent and maybe it fell out of my mouth faster than I anticipated, Like it happens.
yeah. Well, what I find is there's plenty of people who say tons of dumb shit, but don't have that feeling of maybe what I'm saying is not the most intelligent thing, but I'm saying it anyway, and more. I know everything.
Yeah, never experienced that one. I think I have a little I'm overly self-aware. I think
Yeah.
is maybe the thing with that.
That's usually
Um
preferable, I think.
I think so as well. Typically the self-aware people with a good sense of humor are the people that I get along with the most. So
Yeah.
I feel that. So yeah, I mean like watching a couple of your live streams, I mean, I just really wanted to chat with you because I feel like you have a lot of like we have a lot of similar views, but then I noticed that there's like definitely some differences that we have in like viewing, the trans thing and stuff. But before we get into like the actual like trans community as a whole, like I just kind of wanted to get like your backstory and stuff because I don't really know much about you outside of like I know you're in the UK and I know you transitioned around the same time that I did. So that's pretty cool. Like we're both like almost 10 years in at this point.
Yeah.
So like that's interesting. But before we get into the trans stuff, I want to talk about like one thing that doesn't involve being trans, which is like when did you get into music and stuff? Like that's super cool. Like when did you start playing guitar and all that jazz?
I started playing guitar just before I turned 10, so a really long time ago. We're
Holy
talking
crap.
24 years or something, something like that. My brother
That
wanted
is
to learn
amazing.
guitar, and my parents were like, well, you should as well. And I really didn't want to for some reason, but then eventually I got into it. So I've been playing guitar since I was a kid. I started writing when I was about 12 or 13 or something.
Nice. That's amazing. Is guitar the only instrument you play?
It's the main instrument I play. I can play bits of like keyboard and stuff. I can play bass because if you can play guitar, you can probably play bass. Like I'll try playing anything. I'm probably not an expert at it.
Okay, sick. I literally my only experience with instruments was I played a saxophone in middle school. So
Oh wow.
yeah, wish I could play guitar or piano, something that actually would transfer and I could play regularly. But it is what it is.
Did you ever learn Careless Whisper?
No, I didn't.
Ah, it's a shame.
I'm missing out. All right, okay. So cool. So let's start off with you talk about like dysphoria, like a bit, and it seems like maybe we're not really sure like if dysphoria is like a thing. Like, is that something that you felt like you experienced? Like and that's what led you to transitioning, like that kind of thing?
It's a bit complicated. I do think
Okay.
that dysphoria is a thing, and I've
Okay.
met the odd person where it really isn't clear where it comes from. My
Mhm.
thing is I don't really know whether it's like the start or somewhere in the middle, if that makes
Right.
sense. Like it
Okay.
comes from somewhere else. But I mean, I've
Okay.
definitely experienced something like that. Like as a kid, I always felt like I'd rather have been born a girl. I just kind of started feminizing a lot especially when I moved out of home when I was 18. And
Mhm.
it just kind of, for about 6 or so years, just got compulsively more of a thing that I would do to where everyone thought I was trans even though I wasn't. So I don't know. It got to the stage where I was like, I don't know. I'm not worried about transphobia anymore because I experience it anyway.
Interesting. Okay, so like how old like do you remember how old you were when like those things first started hitting you?
I'm like, God, I want to say like 6 or 7 or something. But it was
Okay,
really just feeling
same.
like I'd rather have been born a girl. I don't think I was
Okay.
ever like, oh, I'm a girl.
Mhm. See, I think for me like there was kind of that idea, but then also like I feel like mine was like my I guess gender presentation was like, always so backwards because in my mind like I always had to like put forth the effort to be like act like a boy. Like you need to stop, sounding like this. You need to stop doing this. You need to like, whatever. So I feel like my whole life, or at least, starting off, my childhood, it was like this performative act to like act like a dude. And like I don't know, like it was just like so backwards. But I had like that similar thought of like, one, am I a girl? Two, like, should I have been born a girl, type of thing. So that's interesting. I wasn't sure if that was something that, you had gone through also as well. But for you, the main feeling was I should have been born a girl. Like, did that cause, I mean, I'm assuming that caused some level of like distress, depression, like some kind of like, for me, I feel like it was pretty low key and it amped up as I got into my teenage years to where it was just like unavoidable.
Yeah. I don't know if I felt like I should have been born a girl. I think I interpreted it that way for a while, but it was more just
Okay.
that's what I would have preferred. But like, sorry, what was the question again? You might need to remind me.
Oh, no, you're good. It was just like, I'm not even sure like there really was a question in there. Sometimes I just be talking, but oh yeah, the question is like, did your dysphoria intensify as you got older, basically?
I think
Or did
so.
this feeling of it? Yeah,
Like, I kind of ignored it for a long time because
same.
I had a lot of other stuff going on. Like, I
Okay.
never got on with other kids as a kid.
Hmm.
I was kind of, I was one of those like former gifted children, I guess, and
Same.
I was good at stuff, but I was not good at getting on with others.
Mm.
And I guess I just had a lot more to worry about. I remember when I was in my teens, like when I was around 16 or whatever, I was kind of feeling like I don't really feel connected to any gender. Like
Okay.
I don't really think of myself in those terms. And I didn't know what non-binary was. This would have been like 2006 or something,
Hmm.
But like I kind of felt that way. I didn't really know what to do with any of those feelings. And like as a kid, it's kind of you think these things, you just kind of realize it's something you probably shouldn't verbalize to other people, and then you just kind of get on with it. I guess that's kind of how it went for a long time.
Literally, no, I don't know if you've watched like my backstory video, but like I grew up thinking, one, first off, I thought that being gay meant that you thought you were a woman for like a while. Like I'm from a very small town in like the
Yeah,
middle of the US and like it's like the Bible Belt. So like I really thought that like being gay was like that. And then past that, I was like, oh, that's not what being gay is. Like I'm just nuts. Like I'm just full blown crazy pants. Like wow, that sucks. Like that's so horrible. Like as a kid and like a teenager to like internalize that. Like I don't
yeah, of
know.
course.
It's not great. But as for the gifted thing, I was also gifted, but I had the opposite problem that you did. I was like a chronic people pleaser. I was like a chameleon. Like I had to fit in with like everybody, even if I really had no business being friends with them or like doing it. Like it was just masking all the time. Like I didn't really have all that many close friends, but I was able to fit in ish. But I don't think I don't think that experience was much better, to be honest. Like, what did I get from it? Um, okay, so I think we've kind of touched on it just in the realms of like, you were really young, but did you know like what trans was or just the possibility of transition or like in anything like that existed when you first had these feelings?
So not at the time. My first
Okay.
experiences of any of that were, I'd say maybe say like 10 or 11 or something.
Okay.
I'd see the odd like news article. I think there was someone in Big Brother called Nadia, and she was one
Okay.
example of this.
Oh my God, I
And it would
remember Big Brother.
usually, yeah, yeah. So it was one of the early British series. There was a trans woman in it, and I can't remember when because I didn't watch it because I was a kid. But like what was I saying? Yeah, the way it was like presented in the news when I saw it, it was like men who think they're women, and straight away I'm like, well, I don't want to be that. Like that sounds weird. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The early days of media portrayal of being trans and trans women was very it was something. It was something. Um Mine was the same though. I didn't even learn that that was like a thing that people could do until I Googled it when I was 14. So I had, no idea that was the thing. I just bring that up because like, so many like there is I guess more of a narrative that I'm seeing online in terms of it being like, oh, social contagion, which I think in some cases, like that's valid. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think that we have the data to support that, but I do think that there are instances, especially now that like, I don't know, some people are doing some things and I'm like, oh, I think you have been influenced, my friend. But I also think that there's plenty of people that, like, us, we never, we didn't see that when we were experiencing these things. So it's so funny when like I've talked to one person that tried to bring up that argument to me of like, well, do you just think that like maybe seeing all this stuff? And I was like, bro, I was like 7, like I didn't know. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not thinking that in depth about it. I'm a kid. Like, what's going on with that? So, okay, interesting. I just wanted to clarify that.
Just on that point, do you think we'll ever get much data to show that there's like social contagion? Because I feel like it's the kind of thing people wouldn't report, and most of it's based on like testimony.
So I think it would be difficult. I think really like from some things that I've watched, it's like it's seeming like more of the social contagion would be more considered to like the like females that are transitioning to males, and they're doing so like it's like the videos I've watched excuse me, have claimed that it's normally like groups of teenage girls in schools and stuff that like one starts off with like, oh, hey, I'm non-binary. And then they all are non-binary. It just quickly becomes a thing like, oh, they need to fit in. And if all you have to do is say you're non-binary and then you're a part of the it crowd, it's like, oh, okay, cool, And like that sounds silly, but like that's, that seems to be a narrative that some people are under the impression is happening. So, I mean, it would be cool if we could get some data on it. I think it's interesting that it's primarily females that we're talking about in that regard. But also at the same time, like, I guess it makes sense in a way, just because of, some reasonings that I've heard from like detransitioners of like feeling really uncomfortable with like men and how they viewed them, and bad experiences that they had as children, and wanting to like kind of get out of that body to no longer be sexualized, to no longer be like looked at in that way. So like, I do think that there's like some validity to the social contagion thing. So yeah, like, and I think honestly, a part of that is, fueling some of these detransitioners. They were kind of sold this idea that, oh, hey, you can transition and just live your life or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, but I mean, like, oh man, being a dude is not all that great. Always, we perpetuate it as like, oh yeah, men are the ones that are oppressing everybody. But like, when you step into that role, I don't think it may always be the most fun, unless you're a very attractive man. Some trans men get lucky, but yeah.
What I find is like, I always really notice when like a FTM person doesn't understand like male socialization and often tends to judge it and be like, oh, like cis guys are so like awkward and weird and stuff. When I hear this, I'm like, well, yeah, that's like, what it's like. That's what all of us are like.
Yeah, what did you think like they were going to be like? Like, that's so strange. I don't know. I think just a lot of the views we hold about men are so strange, because I hear people talk about men as a whole online, and I'm like, I am close friends and I am quite literally married to a man. None of these descriptions make sense. Like, no, like they don't act like this. Like, they're not all these like red pill giga chads that hate women. Like, what is going on? Like,
the gender internet effect or something,
Yeah, like the whole gender war thing is so cringe to me. I don't know, like that stuff is so weird. Like, and also like relatively new for me. A lot of this that I'm like looking into is pretty new for me, because straight up, I'm not gonna lie, like when I initially transitioned, I like made a couple YouTube videos and like things were going good. And then non-binary people started coming out of the woodwork and attacking me for perpetuating like trans medicalism, which I didn't even know at the time I was doing. I didn't even know what that meant. And I was just like, I hate this. I'm done. I'm done with the internet. I don't want anything to do with this. I am leaving. So I've pretty much avoided the trans thing like the plague, outside of seeing like when I exited the conversation in the media was like Caitlyn Jenner and Laverne Cox and Janet Mock. And Janet Mock and Laverne Cox, like respectable trans ladies, right? Like I don't really know anything about them outside of like, they're famous. But then like Caitlyn Jenner is like, hey girl, like I don't know about all that. But for me to exit there and then re-enter, like just all these people like having meltdowns and like saying crazy stuff, and that like kids should be, on puberty blockers and their ability to have surgery if they so choose, like type of thing, which I don't really know how much that's actually happening. I haven't personally dug into like data on that, but like it's crazy. It's crazy to exit and then come back to that. Like I'm just like, oh wow, this is a lot. And I think it's really, at least for me, which I want to get into this is like why you started YouTube, and like when how did that develop for you? Like what made you interested in talking about this stuff?
So like the first year or two of my transition, I guess, was pretty solitary. I didn't know
Mhm.
other trans people. The friends that I made in the town I was in at the time were just whoever I met through music and stuff.
Okay.
When I moved in 2017, I kind of started trying to reach out to other trans people more. Like there was a local place that was very trans friendly, if that's what we're calling it, that I'd see like on Facebook and stuff and like follow them and stuff.
Mhm.
And I think it was fine for a long time, but I noticed how radical people were starting to get and how often people would say stuff that I just found insane. Like, for example, the idea that if you have certain pronouns, you should be extremely militant about correcting people and stuff like that, which I don't really see the point in. I like picking my battles, you know what I mean? If some
Yeah.
waiter says sir because I didn't really make much effort, then it's, I don't know, it just kind of happens occasionally. I'm a male person anyway. But
Yeah.
like it got to the point, like things like, I don't know if you remember the boycott of Hogwarts Legacy, the video game.
Yes, which I'm obsessed with. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so
Yeah.
I played the hell out of it.
I'm like the most uninterested person possible in like Harry Potter. But at the same time, things like these boycotts, I've just always thought they were stupid. And watching everyone I know go insane over this shit and like, they'd start running around like spoiling the ending to the game because the boycott didn't work. And I thought that was
Oh my
insane.
god.
And like
Oh
I'd call shit out and like some of my friends would like really get quite nasty with me over it. And I'm like, I just didn't get it, you know what I mean? we can't
that.
we can't disagree anymore. And it just seemed to keep happening. I'd get to places where I'd start expressing some of my feelings because I get frustrated with how the narrative is and how badly things are going. And it's like all it would do is like burn bridges, you know? So I guess, I don't know, I wanted to move it onto a different place. And a lot of things coincided at once that kind of made me lose my mind a little. And I kind of, this is where I ended up basically. I realized everyone that I knew locally, it was like they were the same kind of people as all these online people, and it kind of broke me a bit, you know.
Okay, fair. Also, if you hear my dogs barking in the background, I apologize. They must
That's
have
okay.
heard a squirrel or something outside, so my bad. Okay, so interesting. So, have you been doing YouTube long?
So I started in May. It's just over 6 months, I think.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a good chunk of time, and you put in a lot of time live streaming. Like, you do
Yeah,
some long live streams. It's impressive. Like, I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
believe I can't believe you can ingest this much content without going a little bit insane.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the way that I do my content is just the way that I watch others. Like, I was a big Destiny fan for a while.
Mhm.
I watched quite a lot of like YouTube drama shit, just people making fools of themselves. So I ended up watching
Yeah,
people
fair.
like Chud Logic, like Queeman and stuff. They just sit and watch stuff and react to it, and like that's kind of it. Or like go through
Yeah,
like logs of DMs of people acting not very dignified or whatever. So it's just the
fair.
format I'm used to, and I wanted to be able to go through a lot of stuff because I felt like when I talked about my opinions and the stuff that I've seen,
Mhm.
the biggest thing that people would do is just like not believe me, just be like, "Oh, I've never seen anything like that. Oh, I don't see
No,
any of
that's
that
not
happening."
happening. Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, then I will record myself watching this stuff, showing it to people, and then you can't say that you haven't seen it or that I haven't seen it because I'm literally there on the screen, listening and reacting to it, and you're watching me
Literally.
do it. So it's like, I don't know. I'm sick of being
I
gaslit. So that's kind of my way around it. So I don't know.
fair. I think we both have like very straightforward thinking of like it's almost overly logical at times of like, okay, well, you don't believe me. I'm going to show you. Do you understand now, type of thing?
Yeah.
But I get that. So you bring up like the local community that you were getting involved with. And I had a similar experience where, first starting out with transition, I had tried to reach out and make friends with some people in my local area. And I made a couple friends, and this was during the like the Trump and Hillary election, like around that time that happened. I was like diehard leftist. There was no question in my mind that Hillary Clinton was gonna win. Okay, like we were so about it, like whatever. Like there wasn't really like a ton of like fear around Trump at that point. I think it was more just like, oh, this man is stupid and orange. But really, like what disillusioned me so quickly was when Hillary Clinton lost and everyone around me started acting like we should just lose our minds and like freak out every day. And I was like, oh, what? Like, wait, why are you freaking out? Like, wait, hold on. Like, what's going on? Like, why are we suddenly under the impression Trump is out to kill us? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't know. Like, it was something that I was like, okay, like maybe not. Like, I don't know. So it's pretty rare. I have met like a handful of trans people. And I mean, I would say anecdotally, maybe 20 to 25. And two of them have been like down to earth, normal, offline, unbothered. They're just living their lives and doing their own thing. But it is so rare that I find a trans person that I'm like, okay, yeah, like I agree with you, that they're not so like militant and like aggressive towards people. Like so many of these people like have, families and stuff that may not really understand like being trans and stuff, but they still love them and they do their best. But it's like they'll talk about, like, oh, my mom messed up. So, I told her, what a horrible person she was and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like, how does this work for you? Like, I don't understand. Like, why is this okay? Like, and they're all hyping each other up. Like, it's okay. And I'm like, what? Like, why? It's just wild. I don't get that. I don't get the aggressiveness. I don't get the hate with that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that like, they seem to think that every tiny thing you should go crazy on. And to me, that's insane. I don't know how anyone has the energy for that more than anything.
I don't either. And also for it to be like, I was randomly added. I know this trans couple, and they added me to a group chat. And it was just full of, all these random trans women. And I don't really engage in things like that really ever. They just kind of happened to throw me into it. I guess she just assumed I would be down for that. There was one that talked about how her girlfriend had outed her to someone, like outed her to the fact that she was trans because, I guess she like passed or whatever. And the response, and so she broke up with her over this. Like they'd been together for like almost 2 years and they broke up because her partner mentioned that she was trans. It doesn't matter that she's like proud to be with her, even though she's trans, type of thing. She outed her. The response in that group chat full of trans women was to beat her ass. No joke. And I was like, I'm leaving. I don't know what is wrong with you guys, but this is crazy. Like y'all are crazy. Like for you to sit here and think that like telling someone, outing someone is like the same as like, or should equate to like physical violence against this person. Like, what? Like, what is wrong with you? That's crazy.
They actually physically did that.
They said that. Yeah, they were all like in the group chat together to be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe she did that. Yeah, you should have dumped her. Like, I can't believe you didn't beat her ass, like all this stuff. And I was like, nope. Not for me. Absolutely not. That is crazy. Like, what the hell is wrong with all of you? And I think that's the thing that really sucks about the trans thing is like when you disagree with them, like it really is taken as like an act of like, I mean, in their minds, like violence. And I'm like, so you can just justify anything at that point. You can justify saying horrible things to other people. You can justify apparently, like wanting to physically abuse somebody. Like it's wild because it's like, oh, well, you're the victim. This is happening to you, like poor you type of thing. And I don't understand how we got here. Like, it's very confusing. It's very wild, but.
Yeah, I think that's part of what I'm doing, honestly, is trying to work back and see what the fuck happened to a lot of us,
Fair. I mean, I kind of feel the same way. Because really it's just a matter of like, I started hearing like over the years because like for I don't know about you, but like for the first few years, like the average person, they were not talking about trans people. Like we were not all up in the media. Like that was not happening. I was not encountering people that knew what trans was. But then suddenly it became like there would be organic conversations coming up about trans people. And it was almost always about non-binary people. Like it was never about trans people, it was about non-binary people. And so like after years of this, I would have like I've had conversations, with people, where I tell them I'm trans and they're like, "Oh, like they them?" And I'm like, no, that's okay. That's not what's happening. And it kept happening so much that I was like, oh my God, like when people think trans, like that's what they think of now. Like they just think of, or at least from my perspective of all the people that I've talked to, like that's what their view of it is, like type of thing. It's men in dresses or blue-haired ladies with purple mustaches. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, that's nuts, dude. Like, how did we get here? So after hearing that so often, I'm just like, I don't know. I finally got to the point where I was like, man, maybe I should do YouTube because like every person I've met, and like I have many conservative friends and I have many conservative family members. I've met a lot of people across the spectrum, and I've changed a lot of minds on, the relevance, the existence of it, I guess, how it can help people. So it's like, I've never met somebody who's had a conversation with me that walked away being like, oh yeah, this is nonsense. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's almost like having conversations with people changes minds sometimes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I don't know. So, okay, back to some of your backstory and stuff. Has transitioning been like a net positive for you overall? Like,
I would say so. I feel the way I tend to express things nowadays is that I'm just kind of compelled to feminize myself, I guess. And so anything that does that is going to be a positive for me because I just feel more comfortable. I just feel, I don't know. I don't like to say I feel more like myself, but maybe it is that to an extent. I don't really know what that means. I don't know what being yourself means, to be honest, but it does kind of feel like that. But yeah, I'm glad I went through it, and I'm lucky I got in just in time before it got difficult. Because in the UK you can get it on the NHS, but if you were to do it nowadays, the wait between getting like referred and seeing the person for the first time is like years and years and years. So for me, it was like 10 months, and it's not getting fixed anytime soon either, because there's just, the NHS has a lot of problems, and those problems affect more people than trans people,
Yeah,
if we've got problems with like dealing with something like cancer or something, that's probably going to take precedent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So that is another question that I have for you in the realms of like, what did your transition look like in the UK? Like therapy wise, hormones, surgery, like how did all that go for you?
So I got referred, it took about 10 months, and that would have been October 2015. I had my surgery basically 2 years later. So I saw the first person, I saw another person 6 months later. You have to get 2 doctors to sign off that you're okay to go on hormones. And they were just asking about like life experiences and what brought me here and stuff like that. I wouldn't say there was like pushback, but like,
that was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah, there was at least some sort of discussion of the different things that led me to this point, because they want to know that you're like sure, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so like I had all that. I was on HRT by 2016, and then I met my partner a few months later. And like, yeah, I had the surgery consultations. It just kind of kept going. It was a perfectly fine experience, honestly. I think unfortunately that's not what many people are getting anymore. But
how do you think it's different now? Just the wait times and stuff?
The wait times, I hear things about like the clinic that I went to has moved around and changed its name a bunch of times. I've heard things about like actually having problems staffing some of these places, which doesn't really bode well. Like we're saying we need more clinics, and then if we can't staff them, then that's a whole other matter.
Yeah, we have empty buildings that are doing quite literally nothing. So that's really interesting. So you said you didn't really get too much pushback. I mean, but you did have discussions over like life experiences and stuff, but there was no like critical like point of like, hey, like, do you think maybe this is something else? Like, are you experiencing other things? Did they push you to, think deeply on it? Would you feel?
Like to an extent, it was kind of like I'd explain something I'd explain, like, say, at what point I got to the point where I decided I was transgender, and it's things like, so what might have kept you from discovering it sooner or whatever, that kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Sweet. So how did like your family and friends take it?
So like, sorry, I'm gonna say every time. I'm just noticing it now, and it's
No,
annoying.
you're fine.
Anyway.
I say all the time, so I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I say anyway. There's probably others. But
Yeah.
yeah, like my mum was like very supportive straight away. Just the whole, oh, I might not get everything right straight away. And I told her before anyone else. My dad took longer because I think he was like, don't you think you should worry about some of your other problems and stuff? And that's perfectly good advice, That's the kind of thing I say
Yeah.
to other people now. But I don't know. I was set on the train, and I think, to be honest, I was just kind of maturing. I was just I just needed to keep on at the time. So
Yeah, definitely.
it probably wasn't that big a deal because I was doing way better at getting along with people at that point. I was able to like work and look after myself. Like I worked for a long time, and I've been around a lot of normal people and stuff. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, they were supportive. I think they still are. I don't have a lot of contact with pretty much anyone because that's just what I'm like. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're supportive.
Nice. Can the same be said for like your partner's family? Because I know that was a whole experience on my part.
Oh yeah, definitely. They were cool. To be
That's
honest,
amazing.
to be honest, I think they liked me better because some of the people she'd been with previously were not their cup of tea or something. So I think they more cared about whether I ingratiate myself than whether I'm male or female.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all about like how you treat them and like what you're about. When I introduced myself to my husband's mother, we didn't get to meet in person because we lived very far away at the time. And so I had reached out to her through text just to be like, hey, like this is who I am after we had been dating and living together for like a few months and stuff. And the only thing I mean, I sent this woman like paragraphs, okay? And the response I got was, so you have a penis?
Wait, was he straight then? And
Yeah, like so that's the thing is my husband has only ever been with women before me, just regular cis women and never like I mean he branched out, just to see like if it would be something that he would be down for and he was but this weird thing happens with like dudes into trans women where people are like, "Oh, they're gay." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess we're going to skip over bisexuality completely. But also, like, dude, but every guy that I've ever talked to, like, they've never dated dudes. Like, that's just not something that they're looking for. So it's just like, that's really interesting that this is like, that's the jump that we made. Like, it's very strange. I don't understand
yeah,
that.
I think a lot of people see it maybe as an extension of gay. Like they've only just got used to this gay thing coming in, and now it's like trans, and we've got the whole acronym and stuff. We stick ourselves together for whatever reason. Like, I wonder. I bet that's part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so interesting. Let me see. I have like a whole I am prepared.
Oh, that's
Okay.
cool. That's cool.
I came with questions. Um, all right. So I think we've covered, a lot of like personal backstory. That's cool. Thanks for answering all my questions. So let's get into like personal beliefs when it comes to the whole trans thing. You and I are very similar on we don't really care what pronouns people use for us. I'm very much like, I really, it's never like it bothered me towards the beginning, but the longer that I've gone, and I really think what happened is once I passed the threshold of like passing, it just went out the window. I'm like, I could give two shits what you think I am. So all that to say, do you think that you're fine with it? When did you start becoming okay with it? One, and do you think that you're fine with it? Because I mean, I would assume you pass in most situations. Like people aren't going out of their way to he, him, you. Like you almost subconsciously expect them to say she, her, and acknowledge you as a woman. Do you think that's why it doesn't bother you and you're comfortable with it?
Well, I got to a point where it was like, let me think a sec.
Yeah, no worries.
I think honestly it was part of accepting my sex, because for a long time I would be like, I'm a woman, like that's how we talked about these things, and that's what
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
do. And the thing is what I found, especially with like lockdown and stuff like that, you don't have as many people around you like affirming you and stuff.
Mhm.
I was really into makeup for a long time, and eventually with everything you hit a wall where it's like you can only do so much with like makeup or anything like that. And then if you're still not happy, it's kind of like, what then? And that
Mhm.
was kind of where I was at for a long time. And I think the only way out of it for me has been to accept my sex and accept that I'm what I am, and that I'm not, I'm male. I look however I look. It doesn't really matter whether you call me a male or female, because I'm gonna still look the same.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not
And the
really,
social experience is going to be the same.
yeah, and I'm not really, I don't really need others to validate me, I guess. Like,
Hmm.
if someone looks at me and says you're a he, then I just don't really care, and I don't really care so much about being validated as a woman. Like, it's nice if people do, but I
Yeah,
mean, I
definitely.
don't know. I've got enough stuff in my life where I just don't need other people to tell me what I think I want to hear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, that is one thing that I was struggling with early on that really just irritated me about the trans community is like I am a very like I hate beating around the bush. I hate this like I think it's called hug boxing type of thing. So I would like ask or like there would be threads that were like, "Oh, what can I do to improve passing? Like how can I be better? Like what is sticking out to you type of thing." Because like I mean I genuinely wanted to put forth the effort to look how I could look, and so many people would just be like, "Oh my god, like you look fine, you're doing great, slay queen," and I'm just like, I don't want that. I want real advice. Like I want real acknowledgments. Like why is this so hard? Like why are you like propping up these people and you're telling them that they look great when their makeup is botched as hell? Like I don't understand. Like we
Or
could
the
be
whole hum thing.
like, yeah, why? I don't know. So that drives me
To be
crazy.
honest, I actually understand it, because people want to feel like good people. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
I
that's
think
a
it
big
comes from a
part,
good place.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you can provide constructive criticism without crapping on somebody, Like
Yeah, you
that's
shouldn't
why
lie.
yeah, no, you shouldn't because and then that's the conundrum is you want to make somebody feel good and you think that makes you a good person, but then you have to lie in order to make them feel good. So are you still a good person? Like it's just I don't know, that gets very questionable very quickly. So yeah, I totally feel that. But it's also why, like it's frustrating with people like Blair White, where I agree with a good portion of her thoughts. I feel like her in her earlier days was a lot more nuanced and enjoyable to listen to. Now it's honestly just gotten boring because it's like, oh, let's just crap on these people and talk about their appearance and stuff. Which like I don't know when it comes to trans women or trans men like with their appearance like I just for me I feel like passing of course there's effort you can put into it but a lot of it is money and luck I feel like
Yeah.
so I think it's just crap to like shit on them for their appearance and stuff. Like they can't control it any more than I can. And I try to explain that to people because people are always like, well, what about the women that you can clearly tell are men? And I'm like, well, what about them? Like we could be experiencing the exact same thing. It's just they were not as lucky as I was. Like I don't think that means you should disrespect them. If it's harder for you to gender them, properly, like I understand, like I get that. But like at the same time, like we don't need to crap on their appearance. Like I don't know. That just kind of sucks. I feel like it's just like nothing good comes from that. So
I get what you're saying.
yeah.
I think it can be quite cathartic, I guess. And
Mhm.
I do make comments on people, and I don't know if I feel like a lot of the time I probably shouldn't, but at the same time, I don't know. Oh,
Well, if you go
excuse me.
out of your way to like look absurd, then like it makes sense. Cause like I have seen like just off the wall, I've lived in a couple of cities and I have seen some presumably trans women like that are like 30, 40, like late 30s, 40s in like a mini skirt, in like pumps and like a crop top at like the grocery store. And I'm like, girl, what is happening here? Like, why are we doing that?
I wonder if they own mirrors and stuff.
It makes you, sometimes it makes you wonder, but yeah, I definitely get that. So, all right. So you talk about, this compulsion to feminize and stuff. And I guess that my follow-up question would be like, even us being self-aware, find an understanding of being male and, inhabiting this kind of, I don't know, new identity or better shaped identity to who we believe we are. If you were forced to present and like live as a man, do you think it would just be like instant depression and like dysphoria back rampantly?
Maybe. I think I'd feel like I used to when I was like, God, how do I even put this? I don't like saying before when I was identifying as male or whatever, because I don't see it that way. But when I was like, living my life as male or whatever we're putting it, I just didn't really know what to look like. I didn't really know how to style myself. Like I grew my hair out in my teens, and that was about it. Like I could like cut my hair off and just dress like a guy. I don't know how I'd feel, but it's just not for me, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if
definitely.
someone did that to me in my sleep or something, then the next few years would be me just growing my hair out again, you know what I mean? Like
Literally.
I just I wouldn't be as comfortable, I guess. I don't really know what I'm doing with like short hair or facial hair or male sort of stereotypical like male fashion and stuff like that. It just doesn't speak to me. I don't know. None of that makes me a woman. So I guess I'm kind of trying to find the sweet spot between those things. But yeah, I don't know how I'd be, but I wouldn't be very happy. I don't think.
Interesting. So you say that, oh, these things don't make me a woman. So like walk me through the pathway of beliefs that you've gone through over the years, how we've gone from, oh, I am a woman to I watched a live stream that you posted this morning. Where you had said like you're not even sure the trans thing exists, like you're not even sure like it's like there. So how did we like how did this go? Like what happened there? I know COVID was like a big thing. You mentioned that, but like what are the steps that happened? Was that the main one?
There's been a lot. I mean, a big thing
Okay.
was how little I related to anyone else that I met that was trans, and how
Mm-hmm,
similar
mm-hmm.
they all seemed to each other. Like for example, it doesn't seem very natural that a lot of trans people are like communists or anarchists or whatever. Like that's
Yeah,
weird to me.
why is that? I've never understood. That's so strange.
I think I like semi understand it. I understand why they'd lean left, being like more predisposed to like poverty and stuff, but that's kind of a different thing. I think
Yeah.
honestly, a lot of people with those kind of ideals maybe lean towards like gender theories or something, and then
Mm-hmm.
the people that come in that don't really have any kind of ideology or whatever, they probably get sort of fed that ideology. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm still working on that one, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was just like I always had like lines in the sand. Like I'm not female. I know
Mm-hmm.
where I come from, and when I hear people pretending that they don't know where they come from, that rubs me the wrong way. And I think the gap between me and everyone else, or me and plenty of other people at least, just got so much wider and wider that I couldn't ignore it anymore. And to be honest, it started making me think, well, like, what womanhood can any male take on, you know? Like, how can you take on womanhood as a male? I don't know if I find that possible anymore. And there's no
Interesting.
real answer. The other big thing really was just no one explains any of this shit. And I kind of understand why now. But at the time, it was like, I feel like I don't relate to any of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
and I can't ask questions about it. So, like, am I just always like shut out from most trans like spaces? You know what I mean? And that felt
Yeah.
really odd to me. So, I don't know. It's just been an effect of investigating this stuff more, because the more I listen to certain kinds of trans people, honestly, the less I trust them really.
I mean, fair. And honestly, that was a big reason why I stepped out of it and really have not sought out trans people in general. I was introduced to like years after I had had poor experiences with the majority of like the people I was meeting in person. I finally met like a passable trans woman who was like successful, took care of herself, did the thing, and I was like, holy crap, we exist. Because I've always been like, oh, it would be really cool to sit down and have like a conversation with somebody that is in a very similar boat as me and isn't just like entrenched in all of these ideas that we basically need to, you know, kind of beat around the bush or just not acknowledge certain realities for whatever reason. But she was like, you know, she was pretty cool. And then organically, I just recently met another trans woman, same boat. She's dating one of my best friends. And she's also very successful, has like the same, you know, mindset of like, yeah, of course, like I was born male, you know, type of thing. Like, what do you mean, you know, type of stuff. So it was cool to kind of broach that topic. And it's kind of given me hope that like we are out there. I think the problem is like the same thing I was doing, which was just like exiting the conversation. We're like, we want nothing to do with this. Like, this is crazy. Like, why am I going to sit here and say that I identify with you when like we're not seeing the same things like happening. I guess like we went through the same like experience ish, but like I took something away from it differently than you did. Like, I don't know how we got here, but that's crazy. I'm not even sure that like a trans community was even necessary in the first place. To be honest, I mean, I haven't had any support from the trans community at any point in time in my life. Support from people I loved was far more important than, you know, support from random people that were supposedly experiencing the same thing as me. And I just feel like it's, you know, it's gotten out of hand. And you brought up like people believing more of that ideology because they go into it, you know, not really having one of their own. And it's like, yeah, I think that's kind of the sad part for trans people is if they're lonely and they don't have that group, they really want to belong to that group of like other people. So it's like, yeah, sure, let's perpetuate these ideals. Let's be down for whatever, communism, I guess. Like
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you get these people who they don't really make friends in school and stuff, and they don't really know what they're good for. I think that quite a lot of trans women transition because of loneliness. It's not something I can really substantiate. But I
interesting.
have a feeling there's an awful lot of trans women that transitioned when they were in like a really shit place in their lives. And some of them don't
Interesting.
get out of it and some of them do. I think that's definitely true of me. Like I moved away from anywhere where I knew anyone and moved somewhere where I was on my own for like a long time. It took me a long time to like start making friends and stuff. And I was already starting my transition by then.
Mhm.
And I think that was a big part of it. Like the way I felt at the time was that I'd like enter into relationships with just anyone and
Mhm.
like distract myself.
Mhm.
But I don't actually think I was distracting myself from being trans. I think that's just the way that I ended up trying to cope. And when you start a journey like that, it gives you something to look forward to. It gives you like purpose and stuff like that.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, I think that happens a lot, and it's a shame. Like I'm sure some of those people could probably find other ways out of it, but it's like who's helping them? So I don't know.
Well, and that's kind of the thing, I guess, with you know, one of my issues when it comes to dealing with the trans thing is just how I don't want to say. I mean, it almost feels like it's lackadaisical and just being like, oh, you feel like a woman? Okay, great. Be a woman. Here's this. And it's like, no, 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 no. Let's back up first. Like, let's go through childhood traumas. Let's go through, you know, sexual fetishes. Let's go through body dysmorphia. Let's maybe explore these other avenues before you make, you know, an irreversible decision, you know, and end up sterile with body parts you didn't expect, and then you actually end up giving yourself dysphoria. So I think that's an interesting point, like the transitioning because of loneliness. Have you seen the video? I've only seen one. There's probably multiple out there, but it's the incels who have decided to transition to women because
Or
I guess they.
transmaxing.
Oh, is that what that
I
is?
think so. Yeah, I didn't pay much attention to it because it seems like one of those fads that's kind of gone away now. But yeah, like people transitioning to try and like get laid, I guess.
It's so strange. Like my husband randomly showed me a video. He's the one who like watches so much random YouTube. He's the one who showed me your channel
Oh
actually.
wow.
Yeah, he just has so much like random stuff. He loves politics and everything like that, and I'm just like I don't want to hear it. Go away. But he's the one who showed me. He's like, look at this, and I was just like, what? And it was just this dude straight up being like, oh yeah, like it's so easy to get on hormones. Just go tell them that you feel like you're a woman and you're very sad and blah blah. And then I got on hormones and now I'm doing all this, and I'm just like, oh my god, like that. are you not worried about regretting that later on? Like, you're going to do all this to get laid? Like, that's insane. Like, I don't know. And so it's just like, if we had, I feel like, a more rigorous process, or at least more pushback to force people to critically think of like, hey, do you maybe have other issues in your life? And maybe this is just having you focus on something else when maybe we just need to fix this type of
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, I
You
understand
know?
the incel thing to an extent. I've been through periods in my life. I think before I met my partner, I was single for like 3.5 years or something. So I
Okay.
understand them a lot and I empathize with them. Obviously, that gets a bit difficult with the ones that start getting extreme with shit, you know?
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I don't know. I think maybe incels are the kind of people that need to be shown a bit more empathy, honestly. Maybe that
I
would help them
agree.
not go insane with this shit and, you know, retain their perspective and not lose it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it would be, a horrible experience to not be able to connect with most people and not receive love and affection and, physical touch, and feeling like, that's completely hopeless and stuff. I think the problem is they get very nihilistic and then they start getting a little sussy. But
Yeah.
outside of that, it's like, I can imagine it would be very hard to keep a positive outlook on relationships and humanity if, everyone has shunned you, including, your own family and like things of that nature. So yeah, that's they're an interesting group. It's an interesting group. And
Yeah,
making the decision
totally.
to transition for it, I hope that that's not happening anymore. But yeah, that was definitely something that shook me. My husband has showed me some things over the years that I've been like, this is trans now? Like, what? What?
I don't know. I see trans a bit like, you know, reasons for transition, a bit like I do like fetishes. If I can imagine it, there's probably someone doing it somewhere. You know?
Right. And so that's something else I like wanted to talk to you about. I bring up like, I guess the biggest thing that I advocate for is I want better science. Like, I'm not somebody that like I've never been someone that is trying to like live in delusion, like I definitely view myself as a trans woman. I am far more on the side of relating to a woman experience socially. Of course, medically, personally, things like that. Well, personally, yes, but like medically and things of that nature, obviously not so much. I don't deal with periods. I don't need to go to, a gynecologist, whatever. But sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought. I do this so often.
That's okay. Don't worry.
Um, so I don't really remember what my point was outside of I don't know. Yeah, that train left the station. My brain just completely shut down. So that's cool.
That's fair enough.
So let's get into something else. So the reasons people transition. That's what it was. Okay, cool. So I'm advocating for more science. I want like a baseline explanation for where the hell gender dysphoria comes from. Are we talking nature or nurture? Is this something that's happening in the womb, or is this something that is happening to, children? The problem past that though is after watching people, like I watched this guy, I'm pretty sure he identifies as a guy. He's like an autogynephile. And he's like down to, I guess, dress up in like women's clothes and like talks about that,
This
and
Ray Alec
stuff. And like
Williams
maybe,
or
yeah, yeah,
someone
yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've spoken to him before. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he seems like he's like very pleasant. He seems like he's like, level-headed and stuff. It's very interesting to watch people like that. But it also brings up the point of like, hey, if we had more like a medical basis, people that could be experiencing things akin to gender dysphoria, it could just be like, hey, instead of sticking these people on hormones, like, why not suggest to them like, hey, if you are getting off seeing yourself as a woman, then like do that occasionally. Like if that's what that's what you want to do, that's personally, I think that's weird as hell, but like it is your choice, it is your life, that's none of anybody else's business. But I think pushing this like drastic thing of like, oh yeah, take hormones, get surgeries, go live your life like as a woman, when it was really just a fetish for them all along, is like, I don't, maybe if we were having better conversations, things like that wouldn't happen. And I also think that, I think there could be an argument for body dysmorphia fueling people wanting to transition. I think there's an argument for people just being really depressed and down and in a crappy place in their life. And they think this idea of like a new start is like, fresh. It's why I don't necessarily love, some of the trans creators over the years that have done their best. They're just sharing their lives, they're just being real. But it's also like, I don't want to say glorified, but it almost seems like, oh, well, it went really well for this person. So like, oh, that's going to go really well for me. So I really try to make that distinction on my channel of like, please God, do not like up and transition all willy nilly. Like I've thought about this for years, like so many years, and I tried to avoid it at all costs. And like I'm still, where I am. So I think it's, all that to say is like it's difficult to like really pinpoint the validity and like who should actually be transitioning and stuff, because there may be autogynephiles out there where like living as a woman full time really does work for them. You know what I mean? Like who are we to stop them from doing that kind of thing if they're not causing any problems? But it's just like it's so difficult now because like I just feel like there are so many things that are not gender dysphoria or people that would really benefit from transitioning, and then you end up with detransitioners, and then you have people pointing at detransitioners and being like, this is why this is nonsense. Like what the hell are you guys doing? Like, why did this happen to somebody? And those detransitioners almost always, like, not always, but definitely they're like, why didn't anybody stop me? And it's like, because that's not the vibe anymore. Like we're not supposed to question anybody, I guess. Like it sucks.
One for the system itself, I guess. Blame that at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how we're ever going to be able to tell who should be transitioning and who shouldn't.
Right.
I don't know how you know that. Like, from what I can understand, people are like told to like exaggerate and lie about their symptoms. And that's not unique to trans at all. That's what people do with all sorts of things,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And where there's this culture around it, that it's become something desirable, whether people want to admit it or not. You get people being like, why would I transition for clout when people, oppress trans people? And it's like, well, have you seen trans communities? Like, if you're cis in a trans community, first off, they're probably not treating you as well as if you would be trans. And like, second off, there's a huge amount of clout. You can get a huge amount of attention from people just by transitioning. If you want attention from those people, is there to take, you know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think what is that person's name? The Dylan person. I remember them. Yes. Oh my gosh. When they were thrown into the media and everything, I had some of my friends sending me this and they were like, what is happening here? Like, is this like why? And a lot of my friends, being friends with me, they're very understanding, of trans people in general, but they're like, this does not read as like a genuine thing to me. Like this seems like a genuine push for like, let's get some clout, which I can't speak on them. They've gone through surgeries and like they've done things. Far be it from me, I'm too scared for surgery because I'm a big old bitch. But like, so like far be it from me. But definitely, I mean, I think that's a good example of like, yeah, girl, that seems very clout driven to me. And you brought up like the exclusive like club thing or like, the feeling special. And I think that's where this idea of like gatekeeping comes from. And I'm so like, I hate hearing that because one, I don't think gatekeeping is even happening anymore. Like there's no therapist, I mean, I would assume, at least not in my experience and from other people that I've talked to, that are trying to push back on like, hey, are you really trans? Like, well, let's discover this. I feel like it's just like, oh, you say that you're trans? Okay, great. Here's medication. And it's like, should we be doing that? Like,
medical gatekeeping seems almost non-existent. It's coming back in some countries, like the UK, for example. But at the moment, like medical gatekeeping is barely a thing, it sounds like.
Yeah, like, I mean, and that was also like 10 years ago. I mean, straight up, I saw the therapist that I saw twice. And I mean, we pretty much combed through my life pretty quickly. And she was like, I don't know, it seems pretty cut and dry to me. Like this is the main thing you got going on. You're a functional adult, but you're still like unable to like be happy because, this is just invading every facet of your life. So like, if you want to get on hormones, cool, but I don't feel like there was, there were no alternatives, I guess, offered, not in terms of solving it, but in terms of like, hey, maybe this could be something else. Like we never had those discussions. It was like, I think it's like affirmative care is kind of like the model that they're going after, which is just like, oh yes, absolutely. And I'm just like, I think some people should be questioned just to
Yeah.
make absolutely sure. Like and the whole like, oh, I'm gatekeepy is like, dude, I'm just trying to prevent somebody from doing something that they could like, regret for the rest of their lives, especially if you're not going to pass, like your life is not going to get easier. It is going to get harder. Like you are going to open a world of, new hurdles and things that you did not expect. Like humans are not always the best. I don't think that they're horrible, but like you're definitely opening a whole can of worms. And if you're not mentally prepared for that, and if this isn't that worth it for you, like you're going to go down a bad rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Like
it feels very taboo to suggest to people that they should develop a thick skin and like desensitize themselves to some shit. Like
yeah.
when I started, when I was like 25, 26 or whatever, I
Mhm.
worked in a Weatherspoon, which in the UK, it's a chain of like pubs that
Okay.
sells particularly cheap beer. And I worked in a fairly like working class kind of right wing town. Like
Okay.
this was at the very start of my transition, like on the bar and stuff. People said everything you can imagine to me. Like, all the people I worked with and stuff were sound. They didn't give a shit that I was trans, and most of the customers didn't. You just get some of them. It just is what it is. But I
Yeah.
think that kind of hardened me up. I think more people should experience that and understand that someone calling you like a tranny, like someone going off at you because you refuse them service and they want to drink more. Like, there's only so far that's going to go, and it doesn't hurt me if I don't let it, honestly.
Well, and it also has nothing to do with you. That's the other thing too. Is like people take shit so personally, and it's just like, dude, if somebody is out here like actively insulting you and like being nuts, it's like that's not a reflection of you. Like the things they're
Yeah.
saying to you has nothing to do with you. That's on them, dude. Like
Honestly,
that is all their crap.
when someone tries to be offensive, that's when I'm least likely to get upset because
Literally, because that's just
they're
funny.
trying. They're just mouthing off at that point. It was usually other stuff, like more subtle things. And I think even
Yeah.
nowadays it's just the more I kind of exposed to different ways of thinking and people having different opinions on what the fuck I am and stuff, that like the more desensitized I get and the more I just don't care very much because anyone can think what they want of me ultimately. There's tons
Yeah.
of people that watch my shit and are like, I really fucking hate this. And like that's just always gonna be the case. Like, am I gonna let that bother me or just kinda focus on doing it for people that might be open to hearing me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one thing that's really interesting about like the difference of being online and talking about these things versus like being in person is, online, Lord, my comment section and some of my videos are pretty interesting.
I'm not surprised, yeah.
Yeah, and so like it's not I've taken to not reading nearly as many comments as I did before. I found that is not super great. It's almost like hearing 700 opinions of yourself is not healthy. But it's super interesting because, in person, all these conversations that I've had and my takes on, just the trans community as a whole and like educating people or like whatever, even to other, trans people and stuff, the few that I've actually had the conversation with, nobody's given me pushback. Nobody's been like, no, you're wrong. And this is why, you know what I mean? But then like to come online, like I knew that it was not going to be like something where everyone was going to be like, oh yeah, we agree with you, type of thing. So that's definitely interesting. But yeah, you bring up desensitizing yourself. So I understand that in terms of thick skin and stuff. Back to, Hillary and Trump election, I could not listen to people on the right. Like it slowly gotten to that point, right? Where I was like, if you're not a diehard liberal feminist, like what is wrong with you? You hate humanity. It wasn't quite. Yeah, it wasn't quite.
Do you remember when the alt-right was a thing? Like back then, I used to watch mostly like video game like people. I watched people like JonTron, and I was really sad when he came out as a racist and stuff. Well, it came out as a racist. I don't know if I even think he's a racist, but like, you know what I mean. But it was like I checked like their socials and stuff when I find like a new channel. I'm like, oh shit, I better check they're not like an alt-righter or something. And like to think about it now, it's embarrassing. Like I don't know why I was like that in a way. Like you can just expose yourself to things and choose whether you believe it or not, whether you agree, and actually think about it. I think a big thing for me was sort of taking my offense at certain things and thinking, well, why am I offended by it?
Yes. So what ended up kind of getting me out of, hey, because it is so easy to fall into echo chambers. I don't even necessarily like, yes, of course, personal responsibility on like the content that you're doing, but it really does get to a point where you feel like, you're just naturally gravitating towards certain videos, creators, media, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden your worldview has been shaped so solidly. And then you're like, oh shit, like what the hell? So one thing that happened to me in my mind was like, oh, it's so weird. When I was younger in like junior high, high school, I was like obsessed with like becoming a lawyer, and I loved debating. Like I didn't care what the debate was. Stick me on something I didn't even believe in, and I would fight tooth and nail for it. Right. I got to a point where I was like, wow, I can't listen or debunk these people's arguments. Like, I'm just shutting down and getting pissed, and I can't listen to it. Hearing people talk about like, oh, trans women are really just like men playing dress up. They're nonsense, like whatever. And also just like people acknowledging that like, hey, maybe women are not always, like they can also do some things that are not great, and like that kind of thing, maybe, we could maybe not treat men so poorly or like view them so poorly, like type of thing. And so that was really my thing. I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to sit here and listen to other people. I need to sit here and listen to people that disagree with me, because if I don't do that, I do not want to go through the rest of my life only listening to people who agree with me. Like how boring is that? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just like wasn't a thing for me. So that's interesting that you like also kind of went through that same deal of like,
I think what's really dangerous with that as well is like you start believing what people you like say about other people. And
yes.
then you actually watch that other person and you're like, this isn't really what I was told it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely. That's been that way, with like a lot of different creators. I was like, I thought Blair White was like the devil. I was like, oh, who knows? Because the way they talked about her is like crazy. And then like I watched some of her stuff. Oh yeah, and still do. And then I like watched some of her stuff, and I'm like, okay, like I don't necessarily agree with everything you're saying right now, but also at the same time, like I don't see why people are acting like she's the devil. Like that's just so disingenuous. So I stopped. I take, what people say about other people with a grain of salt. I'm like, I will meet them. I will form my own opinions, and I will talk with them. Please and thank you. Like I'm good on all that. But that's a really great point. And going into other people's content or viewing other people in a certain light because this person you liked said something about them, type of thing.
And we're all going to experience it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So you kind of bring up like, earlier you had mentioned something about like, oh, like you're not going to experience, or males can experience like being a woman, right? So I guess I agree with you in some regard. Like I get what you're saying, but then the other part too is like, I guess in the way that it is, affecting the rest of society, socially, I would be hard pressed to believe that I do not have nearly an identical experience as an average everyday woman in a social aspect, just in terms of interacting with people, men, women, stores, that kind of thing. The biggest difference for me when it comes to why I am not a woman is really more of the medical side of things. I don't have to deal with periods. I don't have to deal, with pregnancy issues. I don't have to deal, with that. And I think another part of it too is the distinction in childhoods. I think women can have, I don't want to say that women have it harder as children, but it definitely is like they go through difficult things. There's like the body image that's introduced to them so young of like what they need to look like and, what they need to strive to be and how they need to act. And they can't be too bossy. They can't do this, type of thing. So I think it is difficult in that regard. But it's like as adults, it's like it's so difficult for me to like it would be harder for me to find differences in life with a woman than it would be to find like similarities. Like I would have far more similarities with them, like outside of that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I struggle comparing myself to anyone, quite honestly. I think I've lived kind of a unique life in some ways, I guess.
It sounds like it.
So it's kind of difficult for me to compare my perspective to anyone, I guess, and I've never really tried to do so. I think definitely things like socialization. I have no idea like what it's like to get my first period or like get wolf whistled by a man in a high visibility jacket when I'm like 12 years old on my way home from school or something.
Yeah, definitely.
And I didn't have like a normal like childhood anyway. So it's like, I guess, I grew up male. Internally, like that's what it's going to be. I didn't socialize a huge amount. So I guess I was kind of, it's hard to explain. But really, I think I've taken on like aesthetic things, and I think I'm quite a feminine person in general, despite not being like gay, which is usually how that works. But yeah, I don't know. I struggle to relate to most people, so I don't really compare myself, I guess.
Interesting. Okay, fair. So this is kind of, we bring up like the difference in childhoods, and I found it so strange. We had a close family friend that they didn't know I was trans. And when we ended up telling her, she was like, "Oh my God, that makes so much sense." And I was like, "Really? Why?" And she's like, "You have too much confidence." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Women are not walking around out here with all this confidence. Like it's very clear that nobody was weighing in on like your body and like, your thoughts and stuff like when you were a kid."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, that is so messed up. Like I didn't even think about that, like, I don't know. She described me as like, I guess not being entitled, but like definitely, I guess too confident. And that's what was like throwing her off. So I found that like super interesting. Like people can clock you for reasons that aren't even aesthetics sometimes. And like, that's very strange. So when it comes to transitioning, do you think the only reason that it's actually going to be successful and make people's lives better is if they pass?
I don't know. It really depends on the person and what they want to get out of it. If they don't have many expectations, then they're probably going to be fine, I guess, even if they're ugly and they don't care about looking ugly. Like, obviously, you'd wonder what it is that's making them want to do it in that case. But
I guess that's my question as well, because it's like, yeah, of course, like I think if you're experiencing, something similar to me and your only option really is to transition. I mean, of course, you can go through therapy and you can really work on self-acceptance and understanding. I don't think that would have worked for me, to be honest. It was either transition or bust. But it's like if I went into this and, I didn't pass at all, like there was just no instances in like which that was the case. Like, I don't know if I would be sitting here being this happy and stuff. So it makes me wonder on the people that it doesn't really work out for, if passing really is the, defining reason for that. They really can't, they can't integrate into society and they, are such an outcast, and it's made so clear to them, unfortunately, that that's the case. But yeah, I am typically very interested in the trans women that choose to do that if they know that there's like no chance of like that happening.
yeah, I can't relate to someone like that, if I'm honest. Like, I can't relate to transitioning knowing I'm not going to pass at all.
I went into it thinking like, yeah, so that's that. Like, let's talk about that. Like, when it came to like before you transitioned, like, did you think? I think I had very pessimistic views. Like my standards were on the floor. But like, what did you think? Like, did you think there was a chance you'd pass? Like, what did you think about? Like, did you think you'd be alone? Like, what did you think was going to happen after you transitioned?
I was at a low point and I felt like it couldn't be worse, I guess. So it was mostly
relatable.
just that.
Relatable.
I had I don't know what expectations I had. I already knew that I was like feminizing myself like pretty obsessively and looking pretty insane for a guy. I don't know. This is what I mean. I think a lot of trans women probably want a new start or are in a rut and don't know how else to get out of it. I definitely think that was true of me, and I possibly could have been taught to cope with it and stay male. I probably would have ended up looking something like this either way.
Fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot the question. So
no, it was just like what like your preconceived notion. Like for me, it was just like, oh, like I'm probably never gonna pass, and that's okay. People are probably never gonna take me seriously, and I'm gonna be alone for the rest of my life. So I better make good money and have a respectable career because that's all I'm gonna have. And then I did end up passing, and then I found a husband, and I'm like, career schmareer.
Yeah.
What is that? No, I'm just
I
kidding.
mean, I'll say one thing. I'm not like religious or spiritual, like at all. But like
Sam.
maybe things like happen for a reason sometimes. Like I had a
Yeah.
really bad drinking
I love
problem.
you,
And
Mary.
oh, hello, someone loves me.
Wearing
Thank
my
you so
plant
much, Morse.
carrier helps me with my trans-American dysphoria.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Fuck, I've completely forgotten now. Let me just remind myself. What was it?
Yeah,
What was
no,
I
you're
saying?
good.
What was I saying?
That we were talking about, oh my god. You were talking about you were like, oh Jesus. This whole live stream is just gonna be us being like, oh well, we've lost our train of thought. That's
fine.
fantastic.
That's just what happens to me. I get halfway through a tape all the time and I'm like, wait, what was I saying?
Literally, I mean, that was me earlier. I do this in conversations like also as well. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no. I used to be an alcoholic, kind of.
oh yeah.
And when I started taking pills, it was just way too much for my liver to handle. I started getting sick and stuff. So it kind of forced me to stop. And like my partner, I never would have met, I don't think, if I hadn't transitioned, because I did look for like, I looked for like lesbians, but I was as upfront as I could be about being trans because we met online and I was on POF or some shit for like 6 months, I think. And yeah, so I think, you know, ultimately things happened that only would have happened if I transitioned. So I'm like grateful for a lot of stuff. And if people don't think I'm a woman, that really doesn't matter anymore because I found plenty of other stuff to live for. So it's, you know, I'm glad it happened in that way. And maybe things do happen for a reason in a way.
I definitely agree with that. For me, I also was, before I transitioned, like I moved out when I was 16. I was working like 3 jobs. And outside of working those 3 jobs, I was smoking copious amounts of weed and drinking a lot, like probably way more than any person should be drinking. Definitely way too much for a stupid teenager. But it was just like, you know, numbing all of that. You know, I didn't want to deal with anything. I definitely didn't want to deal with my emotions. I didn't want to deal with what was happening. I didn't want to deal with the trans thing. Like I didn't want to deal with any of it. So it was pretty instantaneous that all dropped off after I started taking hormones because my doctor was just like, dude, you can't smoke cigarettes on these. And you definitely can't be like binge drinking because they're like, well, how much, like, do you drink alcohol often? I'm like, yeah, every night. And they're like, okay, we can't do that anymore. That's bad. No. And I'm like, okay, I guess. But then like after I think actually taking steps to do the thing, it worked out. So that was cool. Did you backpedal at any point? Like get to a point where you're like, I'm going to go to this therapist. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to do it. And then you like canceled it and like tried to walk away for a bit. Like, was there a back and forth or you were like, oh, this is the thing. I guess I'm just going to do it.
I was hesitant for a while. I'm a very hesitant person. I put off things all the time for no reason. So like in 2014, I saw a psychiatrist who kind of gave me the piece of paper saying, I think they diagnosed me with like transgenderism or something, like, or transsexualism, like just whatever placeholder name. And then I didn't really do anything with it for like months and months, and eventually like started chasing my referral sort of at the start of 2015. So that was about it really. I didn't really waver or anything. I don't know. My perspective has just changed a lot over time, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I definitely like finally got to a point where I was like, I'm going to do something about this. And then I got on hormones and then I was like, oh no, I'm going to be a freak of nature and everyone's going to hate me. And let's not do this. And I flushed them all.
I already was one, so it didn't matter.
See, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I'm used to, you know, I was used to being different. I wasn't necessarily used to being like an outcast because like I was like, I sound and I act the exact same way. Like I've never changed anything like that. So it's like, there were already people, you know, and my school was like 400 kids, like in my high school, you know, right? And I was the only one that was like remotely different in that way, you know? And of course I was identifying as gay and all that stuff. So I was very used to being the only person that was like out, but like, you know, it was still generally like for such a small town that's like right wing as hell, like people were very accepting and chill. Like I didn't deal with like a lot of bullying or anything like that. If anything, I was more of a bully because I was a miserable shithead. And so it just like wasn't great. But it's I just didn't want to. I was really hung up on the social aspect of really feeling like I was going to be totally alone. I was so terrified to be alone when I was young. Now I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm a housewife. I get to spend most of my day alone before my husband gets home. And, if I want to go see friends, cool. But like, I love me time. I love being just having my peace, So yeah, I don't know. All right. I think we have gone through pretty much everything.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the things I was really interested in. I think you've been pretty clear on like your stance for trans kids. We agree on, very Crystal. I guess my thing with it would be puberty blockers and surgery are just like hard no. Like I can acknowledge that, I had a lot of trans feelings, or, trans related, trans adjacent, type of feelings like when I was young. However, like I cannot remember where I read it. I don't remember what study it was or if it was like people I was listening to, but there's some statistic about like kids that express gender dysphoria or what they perceive to be gender dysphoria. Like a lot of that is alleviated after puberty.
And like that tends to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, being the case, I guess my thing is like, okay, well, so the puberty blockers thing is kind of null and void because it's seeming like puberty is necessary before we can really be making, more of an informed decision. I guess where I differ is being put on hormones at that point, because for me, I'm like, okay, if you have gone through puberty and things have kind of leveled out for you at like 16, 17 years old, I don't really see the difference of being put on hormones at 16 or 17 versus 18 because you're a legal adult at that point. So like, that's, I guess that's really my stance is like, it's not so much of an age thing as much of a, like you finished puberty and you're still at this point, it hasn't, you've gone through, therapy. I think that extensive therapy should be happening, of course, before they make that decision. But, do you agree with that? Like what's your take on that?
I'm not 100% sure. Like the counter, I guess, would be your brain's still developing. So maybe between 16 and 18 in that sense is actually quite a big difference. Mm-hmm. But I'm not like a neuroscientist. I don't know what the difference is. So,
definitely.
It's not a point I can really push a whole lot. I don't know really. I'm still like, I think I would like there to be a way of helping kids that are genuine if we can find a better way of identifying them. But at the moment, it just seems completely like impossible. And we risk just setting off some kind of craze or something, which we already kind of have,
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. And I think that's why, like, I find it so crazy that, after checking out of the conversation for so long, I really kind of expected to come back and like, hey, we found the reason gender dysphoria exists. Like we have the solidified, reasoning for that. We've done the research, like this is what's happening. And that still hasn't happened. And I'm like, that is crazy. Why have we put all this effort into accepting and roping in an entirely different group of people? Like I see non-binary as like their own thing. I have no problem with non-binary people. I just don't understand why they got roped into this. Because they like fundamentally like them coming in to be like, oh, you don't need dysphoria. You don't need this. You don't need that. And it's like, okay, well, you're taking away like what people would be like researching. And then you're actively going to say that like their research is nonsense because it supports the idea of a gender binary, type of thing. But I think in, the video that I watched not too long ago, Michaela Peterson, she interviewed this like cognitive neuroscientist who basically started doing research into hormones and stuff. And, basically like through certain like prenatal hormone dispositions, like they could tell like, if somebody was going to be more inclined to like of who they're attracted to. And like what they could end up like leaning towards if they were going to be more feminine or if they were going to be more masculine based on like testosterone and stuff. So it's like stuff like that I'm like, why have we not dived deeper into that? Because if we can get to a point, if such a thing does exist, whether it is like brain chemistry, hormones, or something else that's happening in the womb that's leading to this, if there are genetic markers that could point out a person being trans, well, then we could bypass all of this like oh, feed me your heartstring tugging story, like I am less interested in that, which I'm also guilty of. Early in my transition, I explained it in a way that, definitely was trying to get to people, people to sympathize with me. But like I'm less interested in that now. Like I just want a reason, like I want logic and fact to this, because I don't want to, be encouraging people to transition if there may be other things that they could do, because it's like I really wouldn't wish this on anybody, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, it's gone great for me, but it's not going to go great for everybody. So it's like I can't, say that. And especially for kids, man, like it's too big of a decision that they couldn't even possibly comprehend of just like, yeah. And it's like, and I think that everyone is trying to come from a good place, like I don't think that the trans people that are advocating for puberty blockers are like evil and like wanting to harm kids. I think that they're just thinking in a very narrow way of like, we're only worried about their appearance. And there's just like, there's more to life than just your appearance, kind of thing. And also, as I said, if they don't go through regular puberty and, in the chance that they would have just gone on to lead a normal life, as the gender they already were, it's like, it's too messy. It's too messy. We don't have anything solidified enough to like do that. So it like, I don't know, the whole thing sucks.
Yeah. The thing is, like, a lot of the community is invested in there not being any real explanation, because then you'd get all these people that want to be trans, but they don't have the thing that makes them trans, but they're going to either think or believe or whatever that they're trans anyway. But yeah, I mean, we could have been looking into this, but we had a lot of important things to sort about, like neo-pronouns or something. Do you want to know what blew my mind? I started a Twitter again, like not long before I started my channel. I hadn't really used it much in the last like 4 years. And I was just blown away that most of it was just still people screaming at J.K. Rowling. I was like, why are we still doing this? It hasn't achieved much of anything in 4 years. Why am I still going on? And every day there's someone being like, at J.K. Rowling, you're evil or something. It's like, I don't understand. It blew my mind a little bit.
Stopped her in any way. Like she's still just like popping off. Like, it doesn't matter. Oh my gosh. That is wild. This is why, like, I don't know. Social media is not for me. I tried to make one, when I restarted YouTube, and I was like, yeah, this is what people do, right? They have an Instagram and they have this. And like, I can't. I honestly, I detest social media so much. I think it just like really influences people to be like not necessarily the worst versions of themselves, but like the fakest versions of themselves.
I think Twitter possibly does make you the worst version of yourself. To be honest, I'm too much on Twitter. Like I'm a lot on stream sometimes, and then when I'm on Twitter, it's too much, Like I kind of realized that it could off-put a lot of people. I had a gig with Trans Pride this year that was meant to happen, and they found my Twitter and cancelled it, which I thought was bullshit. Like, at least talk to me or something. But at the same time, I don't know if having Twitter is like very helpful, and it's just full of insane people. It's like, if I want to see the worst version of any particular community, then that's where you'll find it.
It really was like, no, it really is like that. My video that I did, which I don't necessarily regret it. I wish I could have gone more in depth and gone in the direction of, multiple issues that are affecting the trans community. Because going back and looking at that video, the one where I said the trans community is their own worst enemy, I pushed too hard on like it being the fault of non-binary people, and that being the only point that I like really brought up. And that was simply because like I had gone through, getting into the YouTube thing. I'm a very obsessive person, and I hyperfixate on things. Yeah. So I was watching like a ton of content, and I was reading like different Reddit posts because I'm just trying to genuinely understand, some of this stuff. And I had just read and watched so much shit that I was like, oh my God, like this is insane. Like I did not think that. I thought people were exaggerating, to be honest, when I would have friends and stuff that would come to me and be like, oh my God, this person, oh my God, this. And I'm like, that's fringe. Those people aren't really out here, like whatever. And it's like, there's a lot of them. And like some of the most vocal. Yeah, like some of the most vocal and like aggressive are either like trans women who seemingly, don't really have any chance of passing, or non-binary people, which are almost always just females, which is so strange to me. But yeah, like it's like that was definitely something that I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like that, how do we even untangle this? How do we establish any of this? How do we even move forward? It's become so convoluted and like screwed up. And I don't think that that's the fault of non-binary people. You know, I think it's honestly partially the fault of people like me who transitioned and then never thought about it again because I didn't want to be involved in like the community and I just wanted to live my life. I don't think it's my responsibility to speak out about the kind of thing, but I think that there was a certain I think an argument could be made for having personal responsibility and like disavowing those kinds of people and being like, no, that's obviously crazy. That's not what this is. And if more people like me, you know, would speak up, and you also as well, you know, of just saying like, hey, maybe that's a little nuts. Maybe we dial it back. Maybe not everything is a human rights issue, you know, like type of thing. Like maybe we have more conversations, you know, then it could be better. And maybe if the media stops portraying all of these like crazy people that literally don't even hold the views of like, you know, a lot of other trans people, and we actually start focusing on like serious trans people, maybe, you know, we could form a better idea of it and stuff. But I don't know. That was me ingesting way too much content way too quickly. And I was like, nope, I need a break. You know, this is too much. This is crazy. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's what happens. It drives you insane.
It really like starts to like it is crazy, and I at that point I really considered, you know, I'm very particular about protecting my, you know, inner peace. Like I love my life. I like that it is very chill, and you know it's great. I have no complaints, right? And so when like after I did that, you know, I told my husband, I was like, I don't know that this is for me. I'm not going to lie. Like I already knew like it really wasn't. I'm not somebody that really has an interest in like thousands of people listening to my opinion so then they can like rip it apart. I don't have the most well-formed opinions always, but like it really, the only thing that like really kept me doing this and like wanting to do it was like I started getting all these emails and comments from trans women that are like, oh, like I transitioned so long ago and like, you know, I just live my life. I don't want to be involved in this community and stuff, but I've watched how this has progressed and I feel the same way, but I would never say this out loud. And I'm really happy that, you know, I can finally find a trans person that I relate to because I have been so ostracized and feeling outside of this community that it's nice to have somebody that is like, you know, coming in and saying this without going to the full extreme of like, oh, you know, let's hate all these people, you know, screw these people, like type of whatever, but also isn't perpetuating like, yeah, you're totally the same as a woman completely, you know, like type of deal. And that I was like, crap, man. Like, I mean, I'm not like delusional enough to think like I'm making a difference or I'm going to really change anything, but like, it's cool that other people in the scenario, like related to me in that way or felt like I was representing them in some way. So I guess that's why we're on the crazy train and I'm doing my best to remain sane. That's why I'm like, girl, I don't know how you watch so much of this content. Like the mustache person yesterday. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was just like listening to that and I'm like sipping my coffee, writing out these questions, just like shaking my head because I'm like, what? Like how? I really like I don't get that. Like, that's so crazy. Do you do anything to like mentally prepare yourself? Or are you just kind of like halfway checked out and you're like, okay, like I'm probably not going to agree with anything this person says. Like how do you stay sane? That's the real question.
I'm just so like, what's the word? I literally used it earlier. I'm very desensitized to all this. Like, yeah, the whole thing about like being entitled about things like they, them pronouns. Like I've literally known people like that. And it's like, same, yeah. All of this shit is like, it's not normal to me, but it's stuff that I know is out there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I get way more wound up than I should. Like I edited that earlier, and like I think that one's funny. I think there's definitely been others where I've got way too heated, and there's not much point in it. But yeah, I feel that. Honestly, I think it just kind of, I don't know, something broke within me like earlier this year, and I'm very invested in just learning as much as I can. And I think any irritation that I feel is very secondary to that because, I don't know, I'm learning every day. Like I probably had different takes when I started than I do now. You know, I worry that, I'm going to say some stuff that's dumb and like everyone's going to think I'm dumb for it. But at the same time, it's like, it's a process. I'm not coming out like an expert. I'm coming out as someone watching shit and like reacting to it and hoping that other people feel the same as me, because I feel like I've been driven insane by other people for years, you know.
Yeah,
and like
fair.
wondering why I have such a problem with this shit and no one else does, you know.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
well,
I mean,
and do you think that they don't necessarily have a problem with it, or maybe they're just not voicing it for the sake of like not wanting to not fit in? Because I've heard that a lot. Like the way people exhale when I'm like, listen, whatever the hell you think you know about trans people, do not apply that to me, because we will not be friends. Like that's not how this works. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like if you want to have a real conversation, we can have one. But like, I'm not going to sit here and perpetuate a lot of these ideas. And they're like, oh my God, I feel the same way. I don't want to say that because I don't want people to think I'm hateful. And I'm like, okay, what?
yeah, I mean, it goes back to like, you want to be seen as a good person. You want to take trans people's word for stuff. So if the trans people you're hearing from believe in like gender identity and stuff like that, then you're gonna parrot all that. And I think that's a problem a lot of the allies have. I'm actually talking to I don't know if you know who Alec Gunter is.
I don't.
I'm hoping to talk to him on Friday. I'm hoping that still goes
Okay.
ahead. Because yeah, I have a lot of questions for a lot of these people. I've watched a lot of ally content, and there's a lot of like problems, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's very questionable as to why like a, shall we say, cis person would represent trans people or trans ideology the way they do. Like it's bizarre to me, but it comes from wanting to be a good person. And
Yeah.
I wonder how many people just, you know, their beliefs about trans really just depends on what kind of trans people they've met. I think that's a big part of it. And we're so divided, and we have such distinct like beliefs and stuff that it's difficult, because some people, most of their problem is they've just met certain people with a certain ideology, and it'd be better
really
to
put them
not
off.
treat all trans people like that or something. But I don't know. There's a lot of very childish views as well. There's a lot of, well, someone will kill themselves if they're not transitioned, so we have to affirm automatically, when it's like, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's harm on both sides, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's one thing that, you know, I've heard from conversations that I've had of typically when people are you know, not about people who are trans, it's because, you know, they've met somebody that, you know, claimed to be trans and was just not a pleasant person to be around. Which like I will say, like I have no doubt that they exist, but I have yet to have a conversation or meet a non-binary person that was not extremely aggressive or kind. That hasn't happened yet. I've met a handful of them. They've all been females, and they were all quite aggressive. So that's interesting. And you brought up like, you know, cis people like advocating, you know, for us and stuff. And I've always found that like interesting. Like I do think that it is helpful. And I think that, you know, honestly, probably the cis people that are closest to us would probably have some of the best takes, in my opinion. But for them to just, I guess, listen to a certain, I mean, it depends on the kind of trans people that they're listening to. But for them to like take that on for themselves is so strange. Like I've gotten into, regrettably, years ago, I got into an argument with a gay man on Facebook who was like roasting me because I had like made some argument about like the distinction between women and trans women and how they're not the same. And this man who did not know me completely goes off saying that I will never understand the trans woman experience and what it's like to be oppressed every day, and how dare I for being such an evil like right-wing person and all this stuff. And I was like, bro, I'm trans. Like, you as a man are telling me that I like have all these terrible views, like I'm trans. And he was so shook. He was like, well, that doesn't matter. Your takes are still trash. Like, how could you? Like, I can't believe you advocate for yourself. And it's never like, hey, this person is trans and believes differently than me. Like, maybe let's figure out why. It just goes straight to like, oh, you hate yourself.
It's the Blair White thing. Like, they've seen Blair White, so they want to compare everyone. Like, I get the Blair White thing all the time. I don't think my content is anything like Blair White. I'm not even politically similar. I'm like pretty liberal, honestly.
Literally,
like,
same.
Maybe a little more like socially conservative than most liberals, maybe, but that's about it. But it's an easy comparison. Like, you've got one that's the punching bag for everyone and has been forever. Everyone else you see, you just compare them. Like, everyone I see that complains about like offensive tranny, for example, whose content I really like, I think is great. Like,
oh, Marcus, yeah.
Yeah. And everyone just calls him Blair White when they when they shit on him. Oh, it's another amazing, great insight. You know what I mean? Have you watched any of this shit? And like people will like hear the most nothing things that he says and get really offended and stuff.
Yeah. How do you feel about the word tranny?
I literally don't care. I don't care about slurs in general. One thing that... Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that I watched, there's a content creator called Abba and Preach. These two black guys. I really like their channel, actually. And they were talking about how they'd actually rather people just called them the N-word than like say all this stuff around calling them the N-word. Because like, you know, for example, on somewhere like Twitter, certain words are banned. So people get banned for using them. They come back, they learn for next time, oh, don't use that word. And it ends up, they just euphemize the shit that they say instead. So they're still calling you the N-word, but they're calling you in a roundabout way. And
right.
Hearing like black people talk about how they'd just rather people said the slur because it's easier. You know, you don't have to pass all this language that people are throwing at you. You don't have to like, is this person racist? I can't quite tell. You know what I mean? Because when someone just says that word around you, it's like, oh yeah, no, you're definitely racist. I get it. You're not being gaslit and stuff. Like, so I really feel that. And I think we do give words too much power. Like something like the N-word, I'm not really going to comment on because I'm a white person, you know, but something like tranny, it's like, you want to call me a tranny, then fucking call me it. I don't give a shit, you know?
I've honestly, like, I never had a problem with the word in the first place. Maybe it's just because like I just have like a warped sense of humor. And also like, what, you know, words are just words. Like they don't come at me. They don't hit that hard, you know, for me. So I guess I found it interesting because like I have talked to some trans people and I frequently use the word tranny. I just think I don't know. It's funny. Like it's a part of my vocabulary. I enjoy it. Like it's a cute word. If people want to take it as a slur, like, yeah, I guess, but I'm more of like the ownership of like, yeah, that's what it is. That's what I am. If you want to toss it at me, go ahead. Like it's in my arsenal as well, dude. Like I don't know what to tell you.
I'm reclaiming the R word as well. I won't say it in case people that watch you are sensitive about it, but I'm reclaiming that word.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was something that we couldn't say either. I am so like, I realize like I am basically like a boomer when it comes to like online culture in like a lot of ways. Like I'm online, but it's normally with like gaming with like friends on Discord or something. Like it's never like, let me look into all this like social crap, you know? So there's a lot of things that I feel like I'm trying to catch up on and hopefully not seem so completely stupid and naive, but it's a lot. There's like a lot. Someone mentioned, you know, on one of my posts for YouTube that like, oh, you know, be careful talking to Mary. Like, don't become too black pilled. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what? I'm like, she's selling pills? Like, what?
I guess like nihilism or something. I don't know.
Okay, fair. Do you feel like you're nihilistic? Like, do you feel like you have like a really? Okay.
I don't think I'm that pessimistic. I certainly used to be. Honestly, I think all that matters really is finding some stuff to live for and living for it. I think there's nothing much that matters beyond that. And like so much of this shit that people get hung up on, like I wonder how often they kind of sit there and just think how insane it is that we're sat here doing what we're doing at this moment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like how many coincidences had to happen for the Earth to exist and be inhabitable, for a race of people that would build all this shit and build the internet and stuff. Like, to be honest,
fight over gender ideology online.
Yeah, I just try and remember that because like the world is like a crazy place, and you know, I guess that's a way of keeping me sane. But at the same time, I think a lot of stuff is very meaningless, and we apply meaning to it post hoc because it makes us feel good or because it validates something that we feel the need to validate. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of stuff is a case of perspective. Like people probably could change their thinking if they wanted to, and if they don't want to, that's kind of where the issue is at. Mm-hmm. And I just don't really see trans as very meaningful, honestly. I think that's like the crux of it.
Fair. So not very meaningful, I guess. Like I say like, oh, you know, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because without that meaning, you know, without me being here and without me being able to transition and kind of experience this thing, I probably honestly wouldn't be here. Like, not to be dramatic, like, but I was pretty adamant. But it is also a thing of like, you know, once I hit like maybe 2 years in, and there was no more dysphoria. There was no more like, incongruence of me going out in public and thinking about it. Once I offline, there was no thinking about it. I have literally not thought about the fact that I'm trans for years. It is such an irrelevant part of my life. Obviously I'm married, so it's not like it's being brought up in dating. Like I have like a lot of newer friends, and everyone knows, but also it's like interacting with me, like a lot of them forget on a regular basis. Like if something is like brought up or something, it's pretty hilarious. But it really has like, I don't know if that would be the same thing, relevance being the same thing as like meaning, because it's not super, I guess, meaningful to me to be trans. It's not like this huge part of my identity, but I am like thankful for it. But it's also like, once again, this is the most that I've thought about it ever. Like I have never tried to deep dive into all these things. I was one of your interviews, I think you did last week, you had mentioned like, what does it even mean to feel like a woman? And that broke my brain because I was like, what does it mean to feel like a woman? Also, what does it mean to feel like a man? What does it mean to feel like any of these things? And I was just like spiraling, like trying to chew on that. And I was like, this is too much. Like, I think that we just reach a point of like over analyzing it, I guess, or like thinking about it. So it's like crazy when I meet trans people that are like having these in-depth conversations about like, they're, 3 or 4 genders and like, all this stuff. And they just like enjoy talking. I'm like, to me, that sounds insufferable. Like what, like, is that enjoyable? Like, I don't know. It's like thinking about it so much is just like, it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's partly why I think maybe being a bit more nihilistic about stuff, maybe it's a bit of a defense mechanism in a way, but if stuff doesn't make sense, then it doesn't have to matter too much, I guess. Like, if I'm not a woman in any way, shape, or form, like, is that a bad thing? Or is that just, how it is,
Yeah,
I'm not
definitely.
sure. Like, I don't know why I have to be so fixated on the idea of being a woman when I'm male. You know what I mean?
Fair. I think that like my similar argument for it is like, my distinction of trans women and women is like, I'm not saying that one is less than the other. I'm saying that one is different from the other. And I don't know why I should sit here and, equate myself to being the same thing as a woman if we are just simply not having, the exact same experience. As I said, I think socially my experience is identical to women. But outside of that, like, there are differences and that's okay. Like, I hate that, we can't just have the conversation of like, it's okay to be trans. You don't need to, and we don't need to air it. Like, we don't need to shout this from the rooftops or anything like that. It's just a matter of like, it is who you are, move on. Like, don't let that shape who you are. And I think that a part of it, there is certain people that they really latch onto it for like their identity and stuff. And I'm just like, there are so many awesome things about life that you could be engaging in. And like, this is what you've chosen to take on as your personality. Like, that is just like, I don't know if that's healthy. Like, I don't know if that's great, like I never really experienced, a lot of these people that are like, oh, gender euphoria. And they're just so happy to be like the gender they are. Like, I never experienced that.
I
Like,
wondered if I was like just dead inside or something.
yeah.
Which might be the case. Like, I feel like I don't feel a lot of emotions very much apart from very specific ones. So it might be the case. Maybe a lot of people do experience this gender euphoria thing. To me, it seems more like a honeymoon phase thing, but I don't know. I think maybe it's like I said, I think a lot of trans women transition when life's not going well, and it gives them things to look forward to. It gives them a new lease of life. And I think that's probably got more to do with it than like identifying as anything. I mean, the gender identity model is just the most flattering thing they could come up with,
Interesting. Okay. Fair.
Because what would you rather? You're an AGP, so therefore you have some kind of fetish, or your internal like identity is actually that of a woman, and you're like a woman in a male body, so you're not even a male, you're a woman. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's very designed to make people feel good, which isn't the goal, because what makes you feel good isn't reality necessarily.
Fair. I guess with that is like, so I think kind of the narrative from earlier on was like, oh, trapped in the wrong body type of thing. When I never really felt like that, it was more like, this isn't like something isn't proper. Like I'm not aligning with my body currently, but I have no problems with my body, being this far into it. But it is curious, you said like, just because something makes you feel good, doesn't mean that it's right. And I think that that's true for, a lot of cases. But in this case, it's like, going through something like this and transitioning was truly the only way that I think I would have ended up being happy and allow myself to be like open enough to have like genuine connections with other people and, really explore, I guess, like who I am and, what I like, the impression I want to leave on the world and like that kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, I think the model is strange. I guess in kind of like confirming people because and this is all just goes back to like if there was better science put in front of me that I could conceptualize and understand as to what led us here, that's really the biggest thing that I care about, honestly, is like, do I have a brain that has certain structures that are similar to a woman? Was it a, hormone imbalance in the womb that led to me developing male, but like there's still some, reason for, this weird incongruence with my identity. And yeah, like it's super weird. And I don't know that we'll really ever get those answers. I don't know that I will ever truly be satisfied with it. But also at the same time, I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Like whatever the reason is for it, I've already done the thing. I'm already living a great life. So it's like, at the end of the day, screw it. But it would be nice instead of, all these theories and stuff, if we could get something solidified. Like yeah. I just at least one thing. I just want any science. I just want anything, like anything at all. I don't care if it is all coming from like a nurture perspective. Cool. Like at this point, I am willing to take in any study and look into anything of like people genuinely trying to do this and not for the sake of like trying to absolutely prove it exists or absolutely, not prove it exists. Like, let's just see if there is anything there in the first place type of thing, yeah. I think it's important to, get to that point. But yeah, that's the thing. It was really great having this conversation with you.
Yeah, totally,
I'm glad that, overall it seems like transition has gone well and that you have a partner that loves you and, things seem to be going pretty great for you. And, you're out here watching all of this lovely content, providing commentary on it. It's fun. It's fun to watch you do that.
It passes the time. I feel like I'm learning something. It's not always what I want to be learning, but it's something.
Fair.
Yeah, it's the information is out there and it's for me to think whatever I think of it, really. And if I end up saying mean things about some people and they don't like it, unfortunately, that's just part of it. People put things out in public. It's fair game as far as I can tell.
you gotta be open to it. When my husband said that there was somebody like reacting to my video, I was like, oh God, I can't watch it. I can't do that. And so I was literally like, okay. I was like, all right, Elena, you have to be able to deal with other people talking about you. Like it's just gonna get worse. It's not gonna get better. So like deal with it. So I'm like watching it like, and then it was like everything you were saying was like really like reasonable. And you were just like, oh yeah, like we pretty much agree on like this and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, we dodged one bullet. Cool, at least I don't seem crazy.
Yeah, it's a bit scary. Like I've had a few people talk about me. Do you know who Mr. Menno is?
I don't.
He's one of the more gender critical types, I guess. He left a comment on one of my videos recently. And that was a bit scary because I don't know, when someone's quite staunch in that way, because I have gender critical beliefs, I'm not very far away from someone like this. Mm-hmm. It is quite intimidating because I really have to think about what I'm doing, you know what I mean? I can't just show up talking a load of shit just because I'm used to watching people that aren't very intelligent. So, but yeah, it was actually all right. So it's like, I can deal with people calling me a he. It doesn't really happen, but I'm getting better with that. It's something I feel like I have to force myself through because I wouldn't prefer being called a he, but people are going to. I'm a male person again. Like, I don't really think that misgendering is much of anything. I think if someone's going to call me a he when I'm a male, I just have to deal with it. Like, there's no rational reason for it. And I think if more people thought about it that way, that would help, maybe.
Yeah,
and like understood the other perspective.
Yeah, I've always come at it from the perspective of, because people are always like, well, when I gender you, it's subconscious. I'm not thinking about it. It's falling out of my mouth. But, with other people, it's not natural. And they think that that is a reason, not to gender somebody properly. And, I get it. But I think that if you're kind of acknowledging, like, even if it's difficult, if you're acknowledging that this person is, genuinely trying to put in the effort and like that kind of thing. And like, you see like what it is, like, yes, it may take more thought. Are you required to do it? No. But it's like, if you like, I've always described it as like, it's the kind thing to do. Like, are you required to do the kind thing? Like, no, but like, just know that if you go out of your way to put in that effort, it can help alleviate, something for them, that could really like, make their day, but also not your job. Like I'm very much like live and let live, freedom of speech, like all that jazz. But I also think like, hey, like, yeah, it is that person's choice to be upset if somebody misgenders them. Of course, we're responsible for our own feelings, but I still think at the end of the day, it's like, it's the kind thing to do for somebody, if you're noticing like that kind of thing. So I don't know, that's how I've always explained it to people is like, it's not a requirement, but it is nice. It is a nice thing. If they're genuinely, trying to put forth that effort, I think it's a really kind thing to do for people.
Yeah, that's definitely a black pill area for me, then I would say. I think the whole thing is like meaningless and people should just not get as upset as they do. And maybe that sounds mean, but I don't know. I don't know what else to think.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I'm definitely like of, the point. It's pretty rare. Like, I don't really think I've ever really had an instance of like someone really just trying to call me like a dude. But at this point, even if they did, I'm like, listen, like, okay, like if that's really how you feel, like that's fine. But I feel like it is going to be more difficult for you to gender me as a dude than it would be as a woman, like, because you're going to have to think about it. And if I didn't tell you, and if you didn't know, like, you're not naturally going to come to that conclusion. So it's just like, I don't know, it's just so disingenuous. Like, I remember years back, I briefly watched this debate between Blair White and Candace Owens, and she was like trying to call Blair White a he. And I'm just like, that's so stupid, because if you didn't know, like, you wouldn't be gendering her that way. Like, you're intentionally doing this, And so I've always just found that like so silly. Like, of course it's like a non-issue, but it's also just dumb.
I think I actually do understand people like intentionally, we say, misgendering people. Because I don't know, what was it? I saw it was really early on. When I started out, I was watching like TV debates. Like some trans person would show up on some TV panel that's like 5 or 10 minutes long or whatever. And one of them was this guy like wanting to know this gender critical lady's like pronouns and stuff, which obviously doing for a stunt or whatever. And I think the way she kind of explained why she wouldn't engage with that is like, it implies that you're kind of taking part in like an ideology that you don't necessarily believe in. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
So, like,
okay.
If you think that males are males and females are females, like, yeah, you're probably going to call someone a he. And if someone's going to like compel your speech by saying, no, you have to call that person a she, I can understand why they would want to like move away from that. And I feel kind of similar. Like, there's people that I misgender, I'm sure, because I do go based on vibes. And I'm so shit at like remembering pronouns that people get called all sorts. Like my partner's like non-binary. She gets called like every pronoun, because I don't know. My brain and mouth are barely connected. But like, I don't know. I'm very against like compelling speech. I don't think anyone is entitled to the words out of another's mouth. And if I call someone a he and also suggest that I think that they might be a bit of a nonce because they talk to children on the internet and try and show them like graphic material of like animals getting slaughtered, which is an actual thing that I talked about at one point.
What?
This person comes onto my Discord and like all they will do is talk about the fact that I used the wrong pronouns for them apparently. And it's like, you don't care about the fact that I think that you're very suspicious. Like, okay, but that means that those questions that I'm asking, they're hanging in the air now. And I'm going to think whatever I think because of that. So I don't know. Most of all, I just don't want to cut myself out of conversations. And I think it's quite a deliberate thing to try and cut certain people out of conversations, if that makes sense, to hold people to that standard and not allow anything if they won't meet it straight away. You know what I mean?
And that's kind of how I felt like going into it. I was just like, nobody's really going to watch my videos because I feel like my takes are really boring. And I don't really think like, a lot of people are going to relate to this at this point, like this late in the game. Like, I think I'm just too late to try and like say anything about it. But I don't know. It's been a pleasant surprise, I guess. You mentioned earlier not, wanting to just, hop on and just like say some shit. And like I feel that, like, I don't know. I'm definitely somebody who just like I need to talk about things a lot and I work through them as I'm talking about them, which is not a great thing on YouTube because your opinions need to be refined when you toss them out there. But do you ever like I don't know, I guess you have more of a nihilistic view of like it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning, like whatever. But I guess for me, I'm like, oh my God, like am I saying the wrong things? Am I doing more harm than good? Like, I don't know. You see so much of like, oh, you're harming your own community. You're pushing all this stuff. Like whatever. Like honestly, like sometimes like that does get to me, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to push anybody to feel like any type of way. Like I know that they're responsible for their feelings, but at the same time, it does make me like question a lot of like, am I saying the right things? Am I doing the right thing? Like, would it be better if I just didn't make videos at all, type of thing, and I just kept on, with my life? Like it is. It's a whole conundrum. Do you ever get in your head like that?
Honestly, what helped me a lot, like even before I started this, because this is the kind of stuff that I would watch since years ago. There's so many like streamers and stuff like that out there that really are not intelligent people. Like, I watched someone like Xanderhal, for example. I don't know if you know who that is or if you know who Vorsh is. He's basically one of his former underlings. But like the guy is not intelligent. He has over 100K subs. Because he just rode a certain wave, which was, I used to be alt-right and now I'm left. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so it's really not about
okay.
intelligence. And I feel like if I watch someone like that and somehow they're able to be successful or something, then I can't really do worse. You know what I mean? So I think that helps. There's a lot of stupid people on YouTube, unfortunately.
I mean, definitely. Well, I mean, if you got a camera, you could be, a YouTuber. So like that is the thing. I think for me, it's really just like I am trying to be as genuine as possible, and I think intent, matters more than anything else. Especially when it comes to like trans people, because I think that there are plenty of people that are cis and don't get it, and like they don't have bad intentions though, like they ask questions in the wrong way, that's not supposed to be asked in that particular way, or like whatever, and it's supposed to be taken as a slight against you or something. But
honestly, I'm trying to cut through that too. Like, is there a wrong way to ask about something? There's more blunt and like to the point ways. Is that wrong though? I'm trying to get away from that as well.
And you cut to the meat of the issues. I personally feel like for me to set aside, any preconceived notions I have about myself and how I feel about something, to just like any deep conversation that I've had with somebody about being trans, to have like a genuine talk with them. I'm like, look, if you are not straightforward with your questions and you do not ask them properly and you are going to beat around the bush with me, you are never going to get the answers you're looking for. And you are never actually going to learn anything, because you're going to be focused on modifying your language more than trying to listen to my answers and like seeking, that kind of truth. So I would much rather you just throw the raw question at me and I can help you, maybe rephrase it better for the future if you are interested in that kind of thing. And if not, I'll just answer you straight up. Like it is so much easier to have a direct conversation versus like, let's jump through all these social hoops before we have this conversation first, So it's just like, I don't know. It's so like it's just so strange to me. Like that kind of thought, was popping up at the beginning of my transition. That was another thing that was just like, wow, that's really not okay. There was like this idea of like, well, it's not my job to educate you. And it's like, well, no, it's not. But like if you are in the business of wanting people to understand your experience and help people understand something that's very strange and, unordinary, like why not share it with them?
Strange. Like, if someone asks me a question, I just answer because it's just what I'm like. If I really don't want to answer something, I'll say. But like the idea,
you could just be like, I don't want to do it.
Oh, it's emotional labor. You should go look things up. Well, I mean, what they look up then is up to them. Like, okay, I'll read some history. Here's a book on John Money. Oh shit. Now I've got even more questions for you. You know what I mean? It's like they don't seem to give a shit in a way. It's like, I don't know. It's so strange. Like you'd think like people who are this engaged in their transness or whatever would want to educate people, and it makes me suspicious of people who don't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because it just kind of seems like, well, it's your loss then if you don't understand it. It's like, okay, well, there's so much online, and that's why, like, I don't know, I would never just tell someone to like Google it, because I'm probably not going to agree with, what they end up finding on Google in the first place. So why would I not just share and, move on? Especially because, anytime, it's always come from just like genuine interest of like, wow, that's such a strange thing you're dealing with. Like, what? How did this happen? Like type of thing. So I don't know. Like, I think I just think that mentality sucks, honestly.
Yeah,
like, I don't get it. So you brought up John Money. I just learned who John Money was not that long ago. And I only know John Money from the twin study in Canada of like, oh God, what happened with that?
Yeah.
And so like, that is crazy to me. And that's also though, like that is part of the reason why I know this is messed up, but I guess for me, it does give me hope in the semblance of like, there being some kind of scientific baseline for gender dysphoria, because, for those of you who don't know, the twin study is like two boys were born, one of them got a circumcision that completely, ruined his genitals. And so they decided, in an effort to protect the rest of his life, he would get a surgery to have female genitalia. He would be raised as a girl. John Money felt like this would be like the perfect opportunity to see, if this would be, life-changing for him. And the kid got dysphoria. Like hella, like super bad. It was morbidly depressed, like had to go through puberty, hated that, had no idea that they were born male, no clue until they were 14, but they had dysphoria. So it's like, okay, I think that is like, it's the opposite. Like it's horrible that happened. First and foremost, that is a disgusting, deplorable thing to do to a child, especially without any real backing. Maybe there was something, good intentions behind it, but it's questionable. So it's like, I feel like for me, it's like, okay, cool. So that person, that's not just like a social construct thing of like what it meant to be a dude. That kid had no idea like what the case was, and they were still having dysphoria because they did not feel like a woman, like they felt like a dude the entire time. So I think that is very interesting. And I think that the same thing happens to us in a way, just backwards. And that's kind of like, I guess, like, I don't know. That's my hope. I'm just a very like, I'm an on paper person, man. Like I want to see the facts. I want to see the science, and that's kind of like where I'm at with it. Like, well, if that can happen, in the first place, if someone truly can, end up feeling so incongruent from it, and, rightfully so, because honestly, that person is super entitled to gender dysphoria. They were quite literally born male and forced to be, the other gender. Like, I think that there's some like validity to that. So that's really like the only reason, well, not the only reason, but it's one of a few reasons why I'm kind of holding on to this notion of like hoping that, a lot of this science can come through and that the medical field can follow to avoid, people making this decision and, ruining their lives or ending up like more miserable. Cause like, I would hate that. I don't want anyone to do that to themselves,
I get you. I think honestly, at the moment, I would like to just annoy enough people into stopping lying. Like, if I'm just going to watch the same basic thing over and over again because these people say the same things over and over, and all I'm doing is pointing out the same lie time after time, maybe I'm just going to have to do that for a long time. And I'm okay with that. Like, people like Erin Reed, who are extremely, influential in trans circles. Like, that terrifies me. Like, you go through, there's plenty of articles about like big things that have happened. You actually like scrutinize it. It's like, a lot of this is bullshit. But it'll be repeated uncritically by every like leftoid trans streamer and like ally streamer. And like, that's terrifying. We're letting someone have a lot of say. This person is telling people what to think. And I don't know why people don't have a problem with this. Like, because it's a trans-owned media company, I guess that makes a difference. When it's like, it shouldn't be about whether it's a trans person talking about trans issues or not. It should be about whether it's truthful. And like, if we're gonna make it into a thing to be propagandized, then it's never going to work. Like, it needs to be like depoliticized.
I definitely saw like there's some comments that like my husband reads my comment section more than I do. I'm going to be real, but he's like it's crazy. Like, I've seen a few of these like people commenting like paragraphs, and like he'll like read it to me, and I'm like, what? Like what? Like, jumping through all these hoops to try and like dismantle biology and like all this different stuff. And, I'm just like, how is that easier? How is all of this easier for you to comprehend and cope with versus just being like, yeah, you were born this way, something is wrong, you handled it, move on with your life. Like, I don't understand understand, like it really bothered people when I said that, like, hey, like I am a biological male. Now, biologically, I don't know, being on hormones for so freaking long, I don't know if you could truly consider me. That is what it is. But that's what I started out as. And like, why is that bad to acknowledge? Like, I don't care. Like, it's just the reality of the situation. Like, why do we need to pick that apart and pretend that's not what happened? Like, that doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't make me feel better or worse. It's just irrelevant. Like, it is what it is. So, and I've never heard of this Aaron Reed person. I honestly haven't heard of like most trans creators, of course. So I will try to be more educated in those deals. So
no, I've been looking around a lot.
Fair. I mean, you watch a lot of different people. Yeah, definitely. That's pretty cool though. So when you say like lies, like what exactly are like, what are like the main ones that you're seeing like on a regular basis?
So a big one that I remember was the whole puberty blockers are 100% reversible. It's just not true.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Things like gender identity, there's almost nothing to back it up. It's just what people say it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can treat it as, not only do I not think it should get as much credence as it does as a theory, it really, really should not be something that if you contradict it, it's a problem,
Sure, yeah.
And, like, one of the things I've realized recently, like I've gone back over a lot of J.K. Rowling stuff. Like she said almost nothing like that bad, in my opinion. We need to be able to. I don't even know
like what it is she said, honestly, in the first place.
Like we need, like, Jesus Christ, if trans people should be able to like talk about their own issues, then why the fuck can't women talk about their issues? That seems insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it impacts them, in the space of like prisons and, feeling safe and like homeless shelters, certain situations, like whatever. Like, I hate the idea that, trans women are immediately proven to be like, or, they're predators until proven innocent, basically, is kind of like how the witch hunty kind of vibe, is. But it's like, dude, it is what it is, and women are entitled to, their opinions, especially with like the sports thing. People are like, oh, if you hate that trans women are competing against women, it's like you just couldn't understand, like, what are they supposed to do, not compete? And I'm like, I don't think that's the case, but I think if they have an advantage like over women, like you're trying to cater to this person and not catering to all the women that have also equally put in as much effort into that sport and love for that sport. And they're losing now because it's a biological male that they're competing against who like has
horrible.
Yeah. And so it's like, that sucks, like I don't understand why we need to crap on women, for pointing these things out. Like I genuinely don't understand why we thought like, oh, this person transitioned. I remember there was like a UFC fighter like years back that like transitioned or something. It was like a big deal. And she was like competing against, like this trans woman was competing against women. And
like someone's skull or something, wasn't it? Fallon Fox?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, like, beat the hell out of her. And it was just like, that's crazy. Like, why did we do that? I genuinely don't understand why it couldn't have been like, okay, let trans women still compete. I think anyone, if they want to do it, like, go for it. But like, they should compete against their like biological sex. Well, realistically, I think females to males also would need to compete against men because testosterone would give them an advantage as well. But it's like, why can't, like, we can respectfully refer to them as women. Like announcers can refer to them as, how they identify, with their names, with their gender, like it's okay. Like there are women who could come in and play football, nothing stopping them, like type of thing. And they would still be referred to as women. Like, I don't think it's disrespectful to do that. And also they still get to do the competition that they love. They still get to be a part of it. Like, why is that? What happened there? Like, why did that happen? I get wanting to make people feel good and like cater to them, but also at the same time, like, okay, well, in catering to this one person, you just ostracized like 30 people on this team, like whatever.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of girls coming forward.
They're more afraid of contradicting the idea that trans women are women, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't, the hard line in the sand of like, if you don't give me this, then you hate me or you don't believe me, like sucks. Like it really does. Like there's no other like real way to put it of just like, I think that may be one of the biggest issues within the trans community is just like the lack of like interest in having, a conversation with someone that one doesn't agree. And two, they just like, so often it seems they are very willing to just shut down and like be angry versus like, oh, hey, like I can kind of understand the perspective of women and how that really sucks for them. It's like, no, what about the trans person? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, but like, can we find like a middle ground where like both people are okay? Like, type of thing. Like, I don't know. It's strange. It's very strange. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
the sports thing is crazy for me. Oh, someone's calling us pick-me's. Listen, that's
We're
fine. I don't care.
pick-me's?
This is like the millionth time I've been called a pick-me. I am very numb to that one. Yeah, I mean, the sports thing is crazy. Going back to lies and stuff, really, we just need to stop telling people that they can literally be the other sex and it's going to sort their problems out. Like, if people know what transition is and can make an adult decision, then yeah, of course. Like, why would I be like, you can't transition because I've decided it's bullshit? No, of course. There's certain things that I think there should be limits on. And I don't think we should be calling trans women literal women, because then that has all those implications about sports. I don't think we should be saying that like a kid is born in the wrong body and that's like a condition they have. I think that's horrible because it makes you think a certain way about it. It puts this like time pressure on it because now there's all this like puberty stuff you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
We need to teach people that puberty isn't a fucking death sentence. I mean, I transitioned after puberty. I'm still here. Like, life has been like a fucking roller coaster, but I'm still here and I'm still, I'm doing okay. Like, I wish we would just, I wish we would change some of the ways we talk about this stuff.
Fair. And I mean, I'm hoping that more reasonable trans people come forward. I don't know that there will be many of them because I don't know. It's kind of like, why would you? And you're just kind of opening yourself up for people to be mad at you and, disrupt your peace and that kind of thing. And that's why I think a lot of people that have similar views to me just have no interest in it. Because they know it's not going to be met with like all this positivity and like, there's not going to be a reward. They're not even going to be listened to, I really don't know that I would ever be able to change another trans person's mind on how they feel about certain things. To be honest, like I haven't really had much luck yet. So I'm not sure if that will be different in the future. But it would be cool if more could come forward of just like regular everyday people that are like, you wouldn't even know I'm trans. I'm just working my job. I'm living a fulfilling life, with my friends and family and, all of that. And this isn't, shit's not that crazy. Like we don't need to sit here and be terrified over literally everything. And it's just crazy to me. Like that translates into being a pick-me.
Yeah, I don't know. People have a nonsense ideology. They have to defend it somehow, and they can't defend it by coming into conversation, because I will talk to anyone. And one thing, I did hope that I'd get more conversations with people I disagree with. I haven't really had very many. Like I said, I'm hoping that Alec Gunter thing goes ahead. It'll be interesting if nothing else. I don't know if you saw my conversation with the queer gossip. That was definitely very interesting.
Was that the I saw one of your shorts because my husband had like watched a couple of them and he's like, look at this. And it was a blonde individual that had like, you had a moderator and they had like talked over the moderator and you're like, that's rude. And they called you the C word.
Yeah, he called me a lot of things. And then for some reason they did like a follow-up. Like a month later, they go back, they watch like parts of the debate and just like talk about how annoyed they are at me and how right they were. It's like,
what?
I'd like to think I'm at least somewhat secure person. I would never dream of like rehashing a debate unless I felt like I didn't do very well and I'm trying to kind of work through it. Like the idea that I do a debate and then have to go back and be like, no, this is why I was right, actually. To me, that seems like extremely insecure.
Yeah, why are you even, I don't know that I would even like think about it past that, honestly. But I was cracking up. I'm not gonna lie. I showed that short to a couple of my friends on Discord last night. I was like, "Oh, I'm going on this girls live stream. Like, we're gonna have a conversation about this stuff. Like, look at this debate that she had." And we were all like cracking up. And it wasn't even like the person like losing their minds, because I feel like it's just like to be expected at this point, which is such an unfortunate thing to expect from like trans people. Is like, oh, they're just gonna shut down. Like, I hate that. I hate that that's the connotation and what's attached to it. But at the same time, you were so calm through all of it, and that's what had us dying. Because you're like, okay, yeah, totally understand. You think I'm great, got it. That was still rude though. Maybe we shouldn't talk over you.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments I'm quite proud of, but like, I don't know, when someone's getting that like intense, I just feel the need to rebel against that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's too much. And like, and it sparked a whole conversation among us of like, dude, like I quite literally, even if someone is trying to have a conversation with me to be like, you're delusional, the trans thing is completely nonsense. Like you need help, you need Jesus, you need this, you need that. Even then I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I hate you. How dare you? You're a freaking idiot, all that stuff. Of course I'm going to disagree with you. But like, if you're not outwardly insulting me personally, like in saying horrible things, like I'm going to match your energy. So if you're just saying like, hey, I don't agree with this. Okay, cool. I don't agree with you not agreeing, like that's it. But I'm not going to like, start insulting them personally. I'm not going to start calling them names and like saying all that crap. Like who acts like that? Like that is also so crazy. It lacks any and all class. And also is just like, why? It's this idea that, you disagree with me, so I can just treat you like shit.
I mean, there's Max Person, they smoke, they take cocaine, they drink Red Bull and stuff. Like, I was surprised they weren't more intense, to be honest. Oh, so Love doesn't want to join the Discord. Here's the thing. If you're just going to run straight to calling someone a pick-me, you're telling people that they're being disingenuous. So, like, you can join and we can talk sometime, or I just don't care. Like, pick-me say certain things. Okay, great. That doesn't mean that I am one necessarily. Like, the Nazis like water, you know what I mean? If I drink water, am I a Nazi? Like, anyone can join my Discord and tell me, hey, I want to talk sometime, and we'll do it. But, like, people just want to like snipe in chat, and it's like, okay, great, amazing. You can call me the same thing everyone else calls me. You know what I mean? Amazing.
Yeah, we're not getting any further. Yeah, I've had the pick me comment a few times. I've had the internalized transphobia thing a few times.
Oh yeah.
And just like I don't know the internal hatred, and I'm like, how can you like look at me, telling you to like live your life, don't make this, your whole identity, if you're going to transition, do the thing, move on, like, don't cause, waves, just go live, find things that are meaningful to you, find things that give you happiness. Like this is not all there is to it. You don't need to sit here entrenched in this like kind of, ideology thing, whatever the hell people think about you is irrelevant. And just like live your life, you are a trans person, move on, type of thing. And that is, I guess, pick me behavior. And I don't get it. Like I'm so confused.
Yeah, sorry. I need to, before I respond to that, I just need to rehear what my conservative masters were that I'm trying to appeal to. Oh, I shouldn't take it personally. It's a bit difficult not to take it personally when you're saying that someone is like controlled by other people or trying to appease other people. I still don't know who I'm trying to appease. Like, I'm not really a conservative or a leftist or anything. I don't really want to be part of any echo chamber. I think my audience is quite diverse. I don't know. It's a completely meaningless thing to call someone. And to be honest, it shows me a lack of ability to think, honestly.
Yeah.
If you can't understand why someone would do something outside of them being stupid, evil, or being told to think a certain thing, then that's you not being able to understand other people's minds. Based on my use of biological males, like who cares? Who cares if that sounds like pick me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it's just, that's just like what happened. Like, that's just like what it is. Like, and to have that like ripped apart in any which way to dismantle biology or whatever. I'm just like, okay, look, you can say all this fancy stuff, but like at the end of the day, I still have a corn dog. Like, what do you, like, what do you mean? Like, I don't get it. Like, I totally, like, I understand, like, if that doesn't make you feel good or whatever, but like, I'm past that. I don't care anymore. Like, I'm still out here contemplating surgery, like, pretty heavily, and I have for a few years. I'm just also very, like, a practical person and a scared one also as well, because it's like terrifying. Like I've known a couple of, trans women who have gotten surgery and it has not gone well for them, and they're having regrets, and stuff of that nature. And God, that's horrible. But at the same time, that was something that was really important to me in the beginning. And I began to see over time that, one, the only people it affects is me and my husband. Nobody else is walking around assuming that that's what I have between my legs. So I'm like, what would it change? Truthfully, like, what would it change for me? Like not much. Like I'm not uncomfortable with my body any longer. I've pretty much accepted the situation for like what it is. So it's still on the table for me. And I think I think I may end up pulling the trigger. But at the same time, I've just been dragging my feet on it because I really think once I hit like, being passable and it becoming irrelevant in my life and no longer something I needed to worry about, like everything that followed was just gone. Like it's just never really been a thing. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's so strange. And you said like you don't know like who you're like catering to and stuff. And I honestly don't either, to be honest. Like I guess I'm just like advocating for like, hey, like we should be able to have conversations about trans people without assuming that they can do no wrong and that
Yeah.
they're right on everything and that we just have to take their word for it, because just like cis people, there is a diversity in trans personalities and ideologies and the way they came to these conclusions. Like why can't we just talk about it?
Yeah,
So
well,
it's just,
it's
I
so
don't know.
politicized. Like people want to shut down certain kinds of conversations. People want to shut down certain kinds of opinions. I can see why, and that's fine if you want to do it. But people that
And
do
it's not
that are
just
not going
us
to
too.
grow and understand different perspectives. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah,
fine. If that's what you want to
definitely.
be like your whole life, then go on, I guess. But why are you bringing it to my door?
Yeah, it's like it's strange. And I don't even think it's not a trans specific thing by any stretch of the imagination. Like I have I have a weird diverse group of people that I'm friends with. Like I have a friend who is gay and he is also a conservative, like a staunch conservative, gay as hell. And he does not really identify with a majority of the gay community because he does not like the promiscuity. He doesn't like, kind of the lackadaisical views towards like sex and stuff. Like he's kind of old school, and like that is something that is not really talked about. I feel like I have seen Amar Odin, I think is what his name is. He's a black gay conservative man, and he's got some interesting takes and stuff. But it's like there's plenty of people that's like he gets the oh you're an Uncle Tom, oh you're self-hating, like whatever, and it's like, dude, can we just like accept that like regardless of like our gender, our race, our sexuality, like we can have views that aren't just through that lens. Like we can think about things in other ways. Like it doesn't have to be fueled on that. Like I'm not a trans person first and then like this other person second. Like I don't view things through the lens of being a trans person unless I'm intentionally trying to do that. Like I just don't. Like I don't understand. Like why is that the first thing that it comes to? Why do we have to base all of our decision making on that? Like it just what? Like what? How did we get here? So
Yeah,
how
fair
is the chat been? Has it been like mostly positive? Like how have people felt about the conversation?
There's a lot of different things flying around. That's fine. Someone's suggesting I
Okay.
watch ContraPoints, as if I didn't spend like as much of my life as you can realistically watching stuff like that.
I think her production value is great. I think she's made some
Yeah.
cool videos. I definitely don't agree with some of them, but I mean, she seems like she'd be a really interesting person to chat with. I
Yeah.
love philosophy, so
Like
it's interesting.
ContraPoints very much is one of the better ones. Like some of her videos I still quite like. I think she did a good job back in the day of like sort of, I guess, trying to explain some of the more internal like trans shit and the internal conundrums and stuff in like communities. And she did a really good job of that. She did a terrible job, in my opinion, on JKR. I definitely used to agree with her back then. But the thing is, what I realized with like things like ContraPoints videos, I wasn't really scrutinizing anything. I just accept and believe everything she says. And when I
Yes.
listen back to it now and I think about it, it's like there's still parts that I agree with. She didn't go as far as other people, and I think people took and ran with some of her less good tendencies. There's certain
Yeah.
argument styles that I can see coming a mile away because I've
Yeah.
watched ContraPoints, But at the
Well,
same time,
she's entertaining. Like she's entertaining and charismatic.
Yeah.
So I feel like in that kind of content, it's like strange because it's not just her sitting there talking to a camera. It's her sitting there talking to a camera covered in jewels in a bathtub. You know what I mean? And so I totally get that in the realms of like just taking it in and being like, oh, wait a second. I don't even think like you get to the end of it and you're like, wait a second. What? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with some of that. Like what just happened? But the whole time, I mean, you got to admit she is very entertaining. It is super interesting to watch, at least. She delivers takes interestingly.
It's the entertain factor with the saying what people want to hear factor.
Yeah.
She kind of came before a lot of people. I'm willing to give her more grace than a lot of people, I guess. It's difficult because I'm coming out of of being quite invested in all this kind of thing. Oh, you were using the definition. I still don't care. It's a stupid thing to say to anyone and suggest that you're a bit sexist, actually. Yeah, I don't know. I think she's done some good videos. She's an intelligent person. I think it's a shame she seems to have gone down the fuck JKR rabbit hole. She was doing videos with that Matt Bernstein guy who I've only ever seen on Twitter, and he doesn't seem like someone I'd want to watch. But I'll probably end up watching that at some point because I need to really hammer the JKR thing into the ground, you know? Which feels odd that I'm doing that. Like, I didn't think that I'd be doing things like watching Magdalene Burns videos and trying to give a trans positive perspective on it, you know what I mean? But it happened because that's it. This is just going the way it goes, you know?
Fair. It's so funny you watched Magdalene Burns because when I was telling you that I was listening to people that I completely disagreed with, she was one of the YouTubers that I stumbled upon when she was still alive and making content that I had found. And like, I forced myself to sit there and like listen to her or whatever. So, you know, thankful to her for providing, you know, her perspective and allowing me to become a little more like desensitized and thick-skinned in that realm. But I found it super interesting that you had like stumbled upon her like so many years later and we're like looking into it. Her views were definitely pretty aggressive. But you know, I think that also it came from a place of like, just like trans people always assume they're being attacked. She was definitely like wanting to protect women and you know, wanted to do so staunchly. So I think it was, you know, I would like to believe that most people are coming from a good place. But yeah, like she was definitely a character. That was something to watch for sure. There was also this other Karen woman that was also, she's like a male rights activist person essentially. And so I listened to like some of her as well. And, you know, a lot of it I still like, you know, don't agree with, but it's also at the same time, like, I'm so past the point of like, oh, you have all these views that I don't agree with. But it's like, you know, there could be so many other things that I relate to this person on, you know, like I have so many friends that have such polarizingly different like political views. Like some of my best friends think so differently than me when it comes to politics and when it comes to certain social issues and stuff. But like we relate on liking the same video games. We relate on liking the same crafty things. We relate on, you know, liking motorcycles or certain sports or books, you know, things of that nature that like matter to me so much more than like how the hell you think certain social issues should be handled. It matters to me so much more. Like if you're not out here advocating for anyone to be like eradicated or you hate them and you want to cause harm on people, like what the hell do I care? Like, are you fun to be around? Like, are you genuinely just trying to put the intent of like being a good person and trying to enjoy life with me? Like, great, that's far more important to me. So it's like, even with people that like I disagree with, you know, it like sucks, especially when like debates and stuff happen and I see them like acting a fool because I'm just like, you know, I bet if you just met that person organically, like they would probably not be like this insufferable person that's like spewing all of these, you know, fucking views. Like it's just, you know, if you met ContraPoints in the street, like, and you had a drink with her, like I'm sure she'd be a very perfectly pleasant person to be around. And the same with like Blair White, the same with any liberal trans creators, really also as well. Like I have no doubt that I could find common ground and like things that we both love that are probably far more important to us than like this trans shit, you know? Yeah, and like I hate that we can overlook it.
It matters like what comes up in conversation, I guess. And another thing that I really struggled with was the idea that like, what would happen? I'd feel like I'm cool with someone, and then because of like one opinion I have, suddenly they're like pretty vicious at me, and I'm just like, I can't live my life having friendships with people that if the conversation shifts to the wrong topic, they're not going to be my friend anymore. I can't deal with that. Like, I need to be able to like, I need to be able to trust people, and that's not easy because of the circumstances of my life. And it definitely makes me more cynical than many people. You know what I mean? It definitely makes me untrusting. And I definitely don't always like believe people for what may seem like silly reasons or not much of a reason. But like, I don't know, like if I'm gonna have these kind of experiences with like other trans people and other like, or at the time other woke people, because I used to be like pretty woke,
Same.
and it's just not gonna work. And it's like, you know, they're kind of the ones making me into what I become, because, you know, it's them that I'm having all the bad experiences with. Like I don't get it. It's like they don't want to retain anyone in their ideology, and like if someone steps out of line, you don't try and keep them in. You like just fucking sling them away, and it's like, okay, well, that's how you make people against you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and it's like it's crap. I've I make it clear to a lot of like my friends and stuff. Like I'm a very opinionated person and I'm very loud. And I think people think that, oh, I must be right in everything I'm saying, or that I believe that I'm right in everything that I'm saying and stuff. And that they can't argue with me because like they don't want me to like yell at them or something. And I'm like, I've gotten into the habit, especially of new friends that I make, of like, listen, I may say some shit that you don't like. It is okay to tell me that you disagree with me. Guess what?
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop being your friend because of that. Like, I'm down to have a conversation. If you don't agree with me on something, like, let's talk about it. If anyone's going to change anyone's mind, it's probably going to be someone closer to me that like understands the way I think and, what I'm about. That kind of thing. But like for it to shift into like, oh, we can't talk about politics. We can't talk about this. There is not a single subject in any capacity that I feel uncomfortable talking about with any of my true friends.
Yeah.
Because I know no matter what, even if they staunchly disagree with me, they are still at the end of the day going to love the hell out of me. I'm going to love the hell out of them. And we're going to acknowledge that these beliefs that we have may be, important to us to some degree, but like friendship and, mutual understanding that we are not going to think the same is so important. It's so much more important, at least to me. Like, I don't want a bunch of people that just agree with me all the time. Like, it would be nice to have people that disagreed with me even more than they already did, to be honest, and to be friends with them, because like it can happen. Like, it is what it is, like I'm told that, online, America chose hate, all these conservatives are terrible people. And I'm like, bro, like almost half of my social circle is conservatives. Like the other half are staunch liberals. They don't agree and they all get along. Like, what are you talking about? Like, these people aren't making decisions based on hate. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, And so I don't know. It sucks. I really hate that that's like kind of the line in the sand, and telling people to cut off their friends, telling people to cut off their family.
Yeah.
And you having to experience that as well with like friends and stuff of like, oh, well, this is going to go sideways if I tell you what I really think. And it's like, they don't even want you as like you. They want you in the filter of like what they want you to be. And like, that sucks.
Well, there's kind of two issues, I guess. Like one of them is I actually do kind of understand the people that struggle disagreeing, because I've kind of been there myself as well. I don't want to get into too much detail, but for a long time, like disagreeing with people would like set my anxiety off really badly.
I'm a huge people pleaser. I get it.
Yeah, I'd feel like, our relationship is fucked or something, like it's going to lead to bad things when really it shouldn't. And again, it's something I've had to force myself through to be able to deal with like disagreeing with people. And I probably get like heated and irritated at people, but it's again,
emotion is emotion. Yeah.
And like the other thing is, there seems to be this push to judge people based on like their beliefs instead of who they are. And I think that's mostly because it's much easier to get a short list of someone's beliefs than it is to actually talk to someone and get to know them. I mean, I see this all the time. Like, someone doesn't like my takes on something, I'll be like, after a while, I'll be like, hey, you can hit me up on Discord and we can talk through it. They never seem to want to, though. So it's like, I don't know. I've had the odd person and I appreciate that. But like, most people aren't willing to make the effort to like humanize others. It's way easier to just get a list of their attributes. It's a bit like the intersectionality thing, where I feel like people use it as a replacement for empathy. Just add people up like equations. Oh, you're only black, you're not trans, so I don't really care about you. I'm too busy caring about this black trans woman with cerebral palsy. I don't know. But like,
Jesus.
That's just an example. I don't know. I'm sorry. Listen.
No, it is. Like, I totally, I get where you're coming from. Like, it really is. We got to take it to the umpteenth, and also just like reduce people down to like what you're saying, like just niche parts of, or bits and pieces of their outward identity. And it's just like, that's not who people are. Like, you don't know. Like, why, like, I feel like it's it's not only like I've heard someone describe it as we've gotten so progressive that that we're getting regressive, because it's like you look at people are claiming like, oh, like let's look at this trans person and then make all these assumptions about who they are based on them being trans. They're probably unhinged, they're probably this, they're probably that, they've had this horrible experience. People come to me and they're just like, oh, the whole like you're so brave thing. When people tell me that, I'm like, look, listen, bravery had nothing to do with it. I was miserable and I did the thing and it worked out great. That's it. Like, I'm not some brave, stunning individual. Like, I was just doing the thing. So it's like, I'm good on that. And then also, like, I've seen videos of like white women talking about like, oh, helping like other like Black individuals and assuming all these things about Black people that are honestly kind of freaking racist. That like, saying that, oh, they all grew up in impoverished neighborhoods. Like, I watched this one college video where it was just like, oh yeah, like they don't really have access to internet. So like, that's the thing. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, why are you basing your decisions of how people are on that shit? Like, oh my God, like what is this? Like, I don't know. I never went to college, so I never got like that experience of like fitting into those kinds of circles or having those conversations. So maybe I would get it if I did, but I just, dude, I don't care who and what you are. I'm going to take you as an individual before anything else. Like, period. Point blank.
Sorry, my partner was in chat. Don't look. No. I don't know. I don't even know what I was going to say then. Yeah, it's. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I just pulled up. I pulled this up because I was like, I'm curious about what's happening in the chat. Is Charlie your partner?
She's been to a funeral and awake, so she's a bit drunk.
I see. Once a cat year threesome. That's a fun comment. I love that. Are we all going to have cat ears? I'm assuming that's what they mean.
I guess so. I probably have cat ears somewhere.
Oh my God. These headphones were literally inspired by one of my best friends. She's had them for like years. And I was like, oh, that's such like an e-girl thing to do. Like, what are you doing? And I would like poke fun at her all the time. And then I was finally like, oh, my headphones went out. And I was like, I'm gonna do it. I didn't say anything. And I just like showed up on stream one day, or like on Discord. And she was just like, you bitch. But I love them. They're great.
Apparently, apparently watching the video is too much effort. Listen, if you think that everyone who says they're concerned about something is trolling, then you've watched too much ContraPoints and you should stop. That's what I'll say about that. Also, just watch the video. Stop being a pussy. Stop being afraid of other people's opinions. Even if they're put out in a way that is aggressive or a bit mean sometimes. I don't know. If someone's offended, they should be thinking about why it is they're offended.
True. I mean, I guess my thing was to like work towards just not being offended by anything at all, because, other people's opinions just really don't have anything to do with me. The chances that they formed those opinions without even knowing me or acknowledging that I exist is probably pretty high every time. So I don't see why I'm going to be offended over something that like literally has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. Like, that's just really, I guess, like the thing. Like, I'm not a person who's bothered by really anything. I think that's most happy people, though, like just happy people that are living their lives and they know that they're like doing their best to put good energy into the world. I don't think they're out here really caring too much about being offended. I would hope. Course, I think anecdotally, but Lord, I don't know. I've seen some comments that you get on live streams and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, just having to deal with that all the time. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it intimidated me for a long time. I definitely get one guy way too much. Like, one person out of everyone in chat will like set me off. And that's, to be honest, again, something that I see in other creators like all the time. So I don't know. But like, yeah, I'm still learning. I used to reply to comments too much. I read most of my comments, but I don't really reply to them anymore. Like, and if I do, I'll try and quickly be like, I'm not having a whole fucking conversation in YouTube comments, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I made the mistake of like when I first started, you know, like I'm very used to like I don't, this sounds strange, but like I'm just used to like the world is kind to me. People are kind to me on a regular basis. You know, that's really all I ever experience. I don't experience people being rude hardly ever. Maybe that's because I am just not a rude person. I only want to put out making people feel good, whatever. But I remember one of my first videos, this person commented, like I don't really get these comments anymore. Like a lot of the critical comments come from trans people, but at first I was starting to get some like cis dudes that were like, "Oh, you'll never be a woman." And this one person called me. He said I looked like Kurt Cobain, and I was like,
Okay.
"Kurt Cobain is hot. Thank you. Like that is so sweet of you." And he got like upset and started trying to tell me I looked like these other dudes, and I was like, "They are both also hot. Like, thank you." Like once again, and my husband's like, "Why are you responding to trolls? Like, why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "Because it's funny." Like, what do you mean? I'm like, and also like way to compare me to all of these very beautiful men, like in my opinion, like
Yeah, it's not the best way of dissing someone.
yeah, like I mean if you want to, you know, say I look like Chris Chan or whatever, is that like who it is, you know, like yeah, hey, maybe that would make me pause and be like, what, really? Like that's what you see when you look at me? Like damn. But like if I give Kurt Cobain vibes, like
Well,
sign me
Lily
up.
Tino
Are you
said
kidding me?
that Kurt Cobain is trans, so maybe she was, you know? If Lily Tino said it, it must be true.
The Lily Tino character, oh my gosh, that whole thing is like, what? When I saw like the Disneyland video, you know, which is crazy that she has stuff like that, because I went to go look at her TikTok myself, you know, and she has plenty of videos that are honestly pretty chill. Like they're not, you know, particularly egregious. She's not saying anything that crazy. And then, and then the freaking Disneyland thing that I'm just like, what? Like
Yeah,
what
so
the
weird.
what the hell is this? Like, why? What made you think that this was a good idea? Like, you genuinely put forth the effort to go get these little snacks in Disney World, and you thought that this would be a good idea. Like, this is what we should be pushing. Like, what the and then, of course, like, that's what people pay attention to, and they're like, well, that's trans. And I'm like, what? Is that?
Yeah.
Is this what I'm reduced to? Like, what the hell? That
I
is
still
so
can't tell
wild.
if it's real or not. Like, the Josh Saiter thing turned out to be fake. Like, I was on the fence for the pure reason that I literally see other supposed trans women that do the same thing, except they're not trolling. They've decided they're a woman, but they're gonna continue looking the exact same, or have like a jumper of body hair and then clothes over it anyway. And that to me is bizarre. I mean, hey, listen, if they're happy, go ahead. I don't understand it, but whatever. But Lily Tino,
Yeah.
I don't know. I shouldn't be surprised that there are people like this out there. But there's still
I'm
a
still
part
surprised,
of me.
to be
There's
honest.
still a part of me that thinks it's a fictional character. I've had this before with people, like someone on Twitter. I think it was one of the queer gossip people. One of the main reasons I had an argument with him that lasted like several days, like as and when I was like on Twitter or not. I just couldn't believe that someone was like this, that would be like, everything you say, you provide an example of something. It's like, nope, this is how it is. And then you're like, he's like blankly contradicting me the whole time. So I'm like, well, it kind of seems like you're just blankly contradicting me the whole time. It's like, nope, I'm not contradicting you, which is a contradiction. It's like, I'm so confused. I just don't understand. I can't quite wrap my head around this person being real. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, so with the Josh Saiter situation, I almost made a video on it.
Yeah.
But then like, I had never even heard of this individual, you know, like once again, I don't keep up with shit. I'm living under a rock. And when he like came out or whatever, I don't know. I don't even know why she happened. He like, I took one look at this person and I was like, no fucking way. Like, obviously not, like clearly not like, right. Like this should be obvious to everybody like that this was the case. And then also if you do any level of reading, it's like, oh, he was a contestant on The Bachelorette, which like, who the hell watches The Bachelorette? Like, who cares? It literally, it's such a stupid, like, it's just trash TV. And so I'm like, I don't understand why. My biggest hang up on that whole thing wasn't even that he pretended to be trans. It was that, why did anyone acknowledge it as if he was serious in the first place? Like that interview that he did, I'm like, why was the first question not, hey, so it seems like you were on an irrelevant TV show and you're really chasing fame. Do you think maybe that's why you did this?
Because which interview, sorry?
It was the interview with some dude that
Alex
was like,
Stein?
it was like, who was it? Like a lot of people, like Buck Angel, like watched the interview that he had with it. Josh Cedar and Alex Dunn. Yeah, that's what it was. Alex
Yeah,
Dunn.
when he came out as when he uncame out. I don't even know how to
Yeah,
word it.
yeah. When he came out, but backwards. So I was just like, I'm so sick of people doing dumb shit and being like, it was a social experiment. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. You're just fucking dumb. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is so stupid. Can we stop like pretending that this is valid?
I'm gonna
And
be
maybe
honest. I actually
what?
think he kind of made a point. Like, he's kind of fucked it now if he wants to go back to it, and he kind of is trying to. I think he's like reliving his glory days or some shit. And people are thinking maybe he's trans after all. I don't really think that. But I think he did make a point because people are willing to accept some pretty ridiculous stuff that is just by virtue of what you can see with your own two eyes, like clearly not what's going
Yeah.
on, and is
Yeah.
teaching you to, doubt your very senses and stuff. And I think that's quite a good point. Like, I don't expect anyone to learn from it. Like, every reaction video, because I watched loads of them and I got really sick of the subject because that happens a lot. And like, a lot of them, they were like, oh, what did you prove? That we're all like nice and tolerant and stuff. And it's like, really?
I don't think that that's
look at
like
what you're
the takeaway from
accepting.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
look at what we have here. Like, that's just doubling down on delusion. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was fooled too. I'll get that because I didn't come off the fence until he came out. But like, he kind of had a point.
I guess like I can see like and that's the thing is like so I get that side of it of like and I think that if he would have gone into it my thing that it completely dropped off on and when he completely lost me was that it doesn't even seem like he really understands like being trans in the first place. He just full blown went to like, oh yeah, these people need hormones or these people need help, not hormones. And like whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, we're already fundamentally misunderstanding like what the hell is happening here.
Hi, my partner's
Slightly
here.
sad, and then also,
Hello.
I don't know where you.
It's on push to speak. I'm holding it down. So if you talk loudly enough, the
Okay,
stream will
right.
hear you. Oh, Jesus Christ, not that
That
loud.
kiss is for you.
Look, if it goes in the red, it's too loud.
Anyway, I'm gonna go cry in the other room now.
Alright, I love you.
I'm gonna go cry in the other room. Oh my god.
Yeah, she was at a funeral today.
Oh, that's so
Someone at work
sad.
died, unfortunately.
You guys are adorable.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's
Oh,
been
you're
almost
welcome.
8 years now. It's crazy.
That is so strange. What is with that? I'm sorry. I just went. I had my 8-year anniversary a couple months
Oh, wow.
ago. That's why I'm like, what the hell?
I don't know. It's crazy. There's someone that watches me that like he messaged me on Discord around when I set it up, and it turns out like he literally he's from the town that I live in and stuff. Like ended up in the US. Like knows all the places that I know and stuff. There's just
That's
so many like
amazing.
coincidences. Like people are not as far away from each other as they think. I think.
Right. And there's so many. Yeah. The super weird coincidences like kill me because you mentioned like you got with your partner shortly after you transitioned. I had been on hormones for 7 months. I started so I gave myself a timeline of like I'll be on hormones for 6 months and then I'll start living full time because I'm never going to be happy with my appearance enough to like start trying to live full time. Which for me was just like, taking on feminine clothing, aesthetic, name, like that whole thing. I was just like, November 1st is, we're just going to do it. We're going to do the thing. And I was like so confused about who I was supposed to be dating and stuff, but I was interested in it because I had never had like a serious relationship before transitioning. I couldn't connect with anybody, it wasn't working. And I literally met my husband after a month of living full time. Like we started chatting and he was like, oh, like come fly out to, meet me and stuff. Like I lived on the opposite side of the country from him and I flew out there and then I never went back. I just left all my shit. I took my clothes and everything and everyone thought I was crazy. And we just ended up like clicking so well. It was like, dude, like I've known you forever. Like what the hell? Like this is so strange. And like, I really didn't know him. So that was really the start of our relationship and it's nuts. And then here we are like this December will be 9 years together, but 8 years married. So yeah. It's super interesting. So like how long had you like been doing the thing before you ended up meeting her?
So I started hormones I think 2 or 3 months before we started talking, like before we met. I literally like just before we met, I turned 26. I was not very well endowed back then.
Mhm.
Hi. Yes.
Well, now
Thank you. There's a snail in the bathroom. I have no idea why. We live on the ground floor. I think sometimes stuff gets in. I hate insects as well, so that's not helpful. But
Not bugs. Yeah, no. Not my friends. Absolutely not.
yeah, just any of them. Charlie sorts me out with like spiders and stuff. I'm just not into that shit, you know.
So you were only like a couple months in. That's super cool. So we had a very similar experience, and like I have my husband to thank for so much when it comes to being more comfortable with who I am, because he was really the first person to I honestly think he's the first person to truly love me for who I am, and being the closest person to me after transitioning and just really getting to, be me. But also, like, I don't know, so many things that I was hung up on, that I would be so hyper fixated on. When I first transitioned, like, I could not go anywhere without a full face of makeup. Like, me posting the video I did in my robe after I just woke up, like, I would have never done. Like, I don't think I look particularly good, but also, like, I don't give a shit, to be honest. Like, it is what it is. But there was so much of like him like hyping me up and like being supportive and being loving, and also just being that person to like be there with you, in the situations of like, when I developed social anxiety in the beginning and like stuff like that, like having him there with me to be like my rock, my shield, kind of like that really helped me through so much. And that's kind of what made me realize, how important the support system is, because if I didn't have my husband, I would have, my friends. And maybe that's not, exactly the same, but like that support really was everything for me in early days. Now I don't really require it as much, but like I feel like that's such a great experience. I've seen other trans people that I feel like are pretty level-headed. I think Alexis Blake, I haven't really watched much of her content. Yeah, she's got some things that I, enjoy, and she's like been with her partner the whole time too, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's like having a really supportive person around seems to make this go, more positively. Who knew? But that's great.
I mean, people need each other for sure. Like, I feel very bad for, there's so many vulnerable people that get sucked into like this culture. I feel really bad for them because they probably haven't had anyone there for them. And like, it sucks, you get driven to pretty extreme measures, I would have thought. Like, I've not been unfortunate enough that that's been my life, And I don't know, like, if I want to say something positive about the state of like trans shit, I think there's a lot of people out there that are better than what they're doing. And maybe I'm giving tough love, if that's what we want to call it. But I think there's people that, there's things they need to hear. And you never know when someone is ready to hear something. So
yeah,
I don't know.
And that's fair, because like this conversation, if we were having this conversation with current Mary and past Elena, I mean, I would probably be no better than that blonde character that was calling you a cunt. Like, I'm going to be real. Like, it would have been me probably being like, I can't believe you're saying these things. This makes no sense. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why do you hate everyone? Like, I mean, I don't think I was really that bad. I think I'm overplaying it, honestly. But I definitely would have been like, I never would have bothered to have a conversation with you. Just to be honest, like, why would I have gone out of my way to have a conversation with someone I don't think I, fully agree on, and like that kind of thing. So I think that's definitely super valid of like, people may not be ready to hear something now, but they could later, like it is what it is. So I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. There's the trans creators, we both acknowledge like, yeah, we were both super woke. But I notice like the contrast in people that are like very woke, and then they're like, oh, now I'm on the right. Like, did that happen for you? Did you like swing from one side to the other and then to the middle? Or was it just like here and then like kind of like to the middle? Like, how did that go for you?
Not really. I've always been like liberal. My family's pretty much liberals. I think I've moved slightly to the right, and that's about it. I've just changed a lot of my perspectives on trans, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And hey, like, people like J.K. Rowling, they're not right-wingers, you know what I mean? They have certain perspectives on like women's rights. That's not right-wing. And a lot of people lump those kind of things in. Like, you've got right-wingers, you've got TERFs, you've got all these people that get lumped in. They're not actually that similar. And yeah, like, I think I've stayed reasonably true to my beliefs. I automatically kind of, I automatically kind of don't trust someone very much straight away if they just zip straight from one to the other. Because I don't know, like,
How
I don't
solid
want
was your understanding in the first place if you're just so willing to give all that up immediately? Like, that's just so crazy to me, I guess,
Oh,
is my
God.
thing.
What was it? Someone I watched who has done that, who's like previously been far right and ended up like left wing, you know? And what was he saying? Oh, why did he stop being a transphobe? Because of his porn preferences or something. And he didn't used to like seeing trans women in porn. And then he decided that he was okay with seeing trans women in porn. So now it's fine. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is this like allyship? Is this representation? This feels like it's sticking things together that get stuck together all the time as it is. Like, I don't watch porn myself. Like, I don't want people to assume that I do because I'm trans. And it feels like the allies, when they say stuff like that, isn't that reinforcing that?
You're like, thank you? I think glad you're not transphobic anymore. Like, what? Oh my god, that is a take. Oh my god, that is a take.
But then usually they're still transphobic because they expect a certain position from trans people. So it's like, well, you're not actually any better. There's certain people that agree with you and you stick up for them. And then when you see them talk about, say, like Marcus Dibb or like Blair White or something, that goes out of the window. It's interesting to see, you know?
It definitely is. I don't know. I just, I think the thing that just really, like, one of many things that sucks about being trans, of being like looped into, you know, having an expected set of beliefs and stuff of that nature, is like, people really expect you to just be like a caricature of yourself almost. And I'm just like, you know, I know that this is really crazy, but can I tell you a secret? We're probably all just really boring individuals also as well. You know, like, dude, we're the same in cis people in that regard. If you saw my daily life, like, I really just want to make a video of like my daily life, because it feels like, you know, they're like, the conservative rhetoric of like, oh, they're out here spreading ideology and like whatever. And I'm like, look, the average trans person that isn't online they have nothing to do with that. Like, after this, I'm gonna go grocery shopping and then like cook some steak later. And that's probably this is the most exciting thing I'm doing all day. Like, I may clean my house and play some video games and edit a YouTube video, but like, dude, like, my daily life is not that interesting. Like, being trans is not that interesting. Like, I don't know why this got propped up to be this like crazy magical thing. I've gone on this journey, like, type of thing. I'm like, I have literally only ever seen it as like, I had a medical issue. I was super unhappy in my life. I solved the problem and I'm done. That's it. I did the thing. I no longer care. Like,
I get you.
It is what it is. So
I think what I worry about, like, someone who thinks that it's this fairy tale thing, they're going to kind of get stuck in the mundanity of it. And that honestly really worries me, because I think a lot of people are in for kind of a bit of an awakening, and not a pleasant one, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, you know, there being, you believe, a portion of trans women who transition for the sole sake of like, you know, they're in a really bad place and, you know, things aren't working out for them and stuff. And it gives them something to look forward to and work on. And I did mention that in one of my videos of like, you know, there is going to be life after you transition.
Yeah.
And if you no longer have this transition to focus on and obsess over, you know, you're no longer looking at surgeries. You're no longer needing to explore, you know, tons of fashion choices. You've probably settled into something. You've probably settled into a makeup style, a hairstyle, like that kind of thing. You know, that's it, you know, like that. And maybe that's also where some of this trans activism has come from, is like, it keeps that alive for them. You know, it keeps them focused on something else that they can do. Because, I mean, why? Like, I don't know, you know, like I said, the thing happened. I did it, you know, it was a huge part of my life for a second. But then like once I got through it, I've really had no interest in revisiting the subject. You know, it's not really something that I care that much about. So, like, that sucks. And I have met some trans people that just like end up doing the thing and they're super happy, like, as they go through the process. And then they get to the other side and they're just like, oh, well, now it's just, you know, I'm back to being depressed. And I'm like, well, that really sucks. You know, was there other issues going on in the first place? Because those don't magically disappear because you transition. You know what I mean? Like, if you already had like self-loathing issues and negative self-talk, and you had, you know, substance abuse issues and like other things, like, yeah, definitely. If gender dysphoria was fueling some of that, great. Like, and you solved it, fantastic. But like, if you just thought that gender dysphoria was going to go away along with all of these other things just because you transition, like, that's naive. And that's why I start to feel a little questionable on, talking about it even in the first place, because I really just don't want people to look at me and my life and how, like, honestly, genuinely great it is. I am so thankful for where I am. It's incredible. Like, I feel like I live in a fantasy sometimes. But it's like, that's not going to be even most trans people experience. I don't even have like a typical woman experience. I have so many girlfriends that are like, oh my God, a housewife. I want to be a housewife. Like, why do you get to be one? Like, what the hell? Like, you don't even, like, what? Like, and it's so it's just like, it's just, I don't want to perpetuate that this is some magical thing that solved all of my problems. In all of these years of spending time alone with myself, like, that took time. I went crazy at first because I was not okay being alone with myself for a hot minute there. That took genuine work and effort and, critical thinking to really work through a lot of my problems and realize, like, hey, yeah, like, definitely dysphoria was a huge part of it, but I couldn't even focus on the other issues I was having because I was so wrapped up in that. I was so absorbed in this one thing. And so I don't know. I think people do a disservice focusing too much on transition and making that, their entire lives. And you're right. It is going to be sad when they reach the end of that and there's nothing else to check off the list. It's just going to be hormones and that's it. Like,
yeah, of course. Yeah. It gets boring.
It's a boring everyday thing. It's not something you think about. That's why it's so, like, funny to me talking to people about it, because I'm like, listen, I know to you this seems interesting. To me, this is just like not even something that crosses my mind anymore. Like, that's cool, but I think people make it like a bigger thing than it is a lot of the time. I think it's so funny that, like, I mean, really, I feel like being trans on YouTube is like easy mode. Like, you just start talking about like different trans things as a trans person and people are just so intrigued with, like, oh my God, look, like, what's happening here, like, type of thing. And maybe that's why it's blown up so much. But I don't know. It's strange. I'm like, just because I'm trans, I don't even think, I don't think I'm a particularly intelligent person. I don't think I have particularly crazy or like super well-versed opinions or ideas, but people are still, willing to listen to them, which is great. But I feel like it's only because, like, I'm trans, to be honest. I don't know if they really care about anything that, I truly believe or anything like that. Or if they're just like, well, you're nice looking and don't seem insane and are also trans. Like, sure, I'll listen to you talk.
I gotcha. Oh, I don't have much longer, but I did want to ask, someone's asking something in chat. Do you think you'd have a different perspective on the social acceptance of trans people if you had a job / were forced to interact with the public more often?
So I have had jobs. I actually just quit a job not that long ago. I thought it would be fun to hop into a full-time position at a warehouse for some reason. I don't know why I thought that would be fun. I did it for 2 months and it's been fine. I have had other jobs previously also as well. I get into moods where I'm like, oh yeah, let me hop into this job, like whatever. And I don't know, like of course I took those jobs after passing. So I think that definitely plays a part in it. Outside of my experiences, I wouldn't really say I probably passed like 50-50 like in the first 2 years, in that awkward hair phase and stuff like that. So there was a couple of instances where people would like make comments, but they were never rude. It was always just interest, or like trying to relate to me in some way. But I don't think so. Like I get that. Like, for me, regardless, it's not really so much of a like me interacting with the public thing as much as me passing thing. Because point blank period, if you don't pass, it's going to be more difficult for you. Hands down. People are going to have preconceived notions. People are going to view you differently, and that's unfortunate. I would hope that doesn't happen for individuals. But, I know that like humans are humans and, that's just going to happen. Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it would have changed much, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, my experience, I felt like most random cis people, if we're calling them that, don't actually give a shit. Like,
no, not at all.
At work, I mean, like, if you're like fucking up something that's in their name, they might get annoyed at you, but they get annoyed at anyone for that, that kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, you're not looking at someone and you're like, oh, well, you're stupid because you're this color or you're this gender, like whatever. Like,
but I think integrating into society is not that hard if you're, I don't know how I'd put this. There was another trans woman I was in an office job for like 5 years. I worked as a letting agent for a long time. Mm-hmm. And there was another trans woman that she was there for the last 2 years that I was. And like, she got on with everyone like really well, like straight away. Yeah. Cause she's just one of those people that is extremely friendly. And it's like, people didn't give a shit that she's trans. I mean, there was a lot of younger people as well. Like, they're going to be a bit more progressive, I guess. But then I don't think people care as much as people think. I think the louder voices are kind of noticed more. I think there's a difference, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think they also notice it because like they're very aggressive and that's what they put out towards people and that's what meets them.
Well, some people
you know?
want that shit. Some people.
Well, yeah, they're
What was
actively
that
seeking it out.
TikTok? What was that TikTok where this woman's like, oh my God, we just had our first hate crime? Like really excited about it. I saw it, I think, yesterday, and it was like, what the fuck am I looking at?
What? That's crazy. No, absolutely not. Oh my God. All right. Well, you said you need to go. I won't keep you any longer, but I'm so glad that we could have this conversation. It was really nice to have. I have never actually had an in-depth conversation like this with another trans individual.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. Thank you so much for your time and like having me on your channel and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for watching all of this content that I could not stand to watch for that long period of time and, speaking out against what you don't think is right. I'm glad that, we have more people putting their opinions out there. I think it can be helpful. But yeah, it was really nice meeting you. I hope you have a great day and, go take care of your partner.
I will. And if you want to talk some other time, just give me a shout. I am around all the time. I'm kind of home all the time as well. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Look at that.
Around whenever. So.
Sweet. Well, yeah, just let me know. I mean, if some crazy business pops off on YouTube ever, maybe we could just get together and chat about stuff. Also, if you think of things you want to talk about, I am here. Yeah. I'm down. Absolutely. But all right, well, take care. I will see all of you later. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.